Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Chapter 1. Maria, I found an interesting person. Hello everyone, my name is Amamiya Ren. This is a very abrupt self-introduction, and honestly, I think so myself. First, let me explain something. If anyone can read this diary, then it must be part of the so-called diary exposure flow. In simple terms, the diary I write will be seen by certain heroines and supporting female characters. After reading it, they might gain some insights into the story or even learn something about the future. Now, this part is very important. If you're reading this diary, you need to understand one thing: you are real, this world is real, and I know about your story and some future events because information about your world exists in another world. In that other world, it has been recorded by mangaka and novelists. That's how I know your story. These words may sound complicated, but they're crucial. After I was born and learned that my name was Amamiya Ren, I started to stay alert for any sign of a politician named Shido Masayoshi or a trader named Akigaro. The result? In my 15 years of life, I haven't found anyone named Shido Masayoshi or Akigaro. Great. This means this world won't be controlled by false gods, and I don't have to act as a savior. But then, I discovered that my school was called Titan High School, and the town I lived in was Beka Town. Oh my god. Why didn't I realize I lived in Beka Town before this? Anyway, it was this sudden realization that made me decide to pick up the notebook I received a year ago, not for any other reason, but simply because I hope to avoid the influence of the god of death in Beka Town. At this point, Ren stopped writing. Ending the first diary entry here felt appropriate. As for whether anyone would read it, Ren wrote the diary with a faint expectation that someone might. This must be part of the diary exposure flow. I just hope it's not one of those scenarios where it gets exposed to the entire world. That would be a disaster. If it were the global exposure type, the past diary entries would have already been revealed by now. Instead of calling it an exposure flow, it feels more like those second-year middle school delusions turning into reality. You know, the kind where everything you wrote back then suddenly becomes real. The idea of those old diary entries becoming reality gave him a headache. But this diary was different. This one was new. If it was going to follow the exposure flow, then it had to be written with sincerity. Unlike those over-the-top, delusional entries from middle school, this one needed to feel genuine. He thought about it carefully. If this really gets exposed, it's better to avoid writing anything embarrassing. That way, even if someone sees it, it won't be too awkward. In a grand villa, a girl with twin ponytails held a diary in her hands, her eyes scanning the pages with interest. Wow, I didn't think someone like this actually existed. Her curiosity was piqued, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. She was not the type to sit idly by. In fact, she was someone who could easily mobilize others with her enthusiasm. Maria. After a moment, a maid dressed in a Victorian-style uniform entered the girl's bedroom. What is it this time, Nagi? The maid, Maria, had pale pink skin and wore a conservative outfit with a blue base and white accents. The uniform covered her entire body, revealing nothing of her figure except her cute face and delicate hands. Despite the modest attire, it was clear that Maria was an exceptionally beautiful young woman. I've found something interesting, exclaimed the girl, Sanzan in Nagi, her eyes practically glowing with excitement. Maria's expression immediately darkened. This child is at it again, she muttered to herself. Maria knew Nagi's habits all too well. Her young mistress had a short attention span and a tendency to get excited about things only to lose interest just as quickly. Whenever Nagi became fascinated by something, Maria's workload always seemed to increase. With a sigh, Maria asked, "So, what is it this time?" "I've found an interesting person," Nagi declared. Huh? Maria was immediately skeptical. How could Nagi, who rarely left her room, have found an interesting person? The windows in Nagi's room are far from the ground. Did someone climb up here? Maria's inner monologue was already preparing to berate the Sanzan in family's security team for their negligence. Nagi-chan, You didn't see someone wandering around the yard, did you? Did one of the guards let someone in again? Nagi's expectant expression quickly turned exasperated. Maria, even though those idiots are unreliable, they're not completely useless. And as long as Klaus is around, how could anyone sneak in so easily? Maria nodded in agreement. That's true. Mr. Klaus isn't that old yet. Nagi absent-mindedly agreed before realizing Maria had derailed the conversation. Maria, that's not the point. The point is, I've found an interesting person. Seeing that her usual tactic of changing the subject wasn't working, Maria reluctantly returned to the topic. Alright, Nagi-chan. You don't leave your room, so where exactly did you find this person? Maria's question caught Nagi off guard, leaving her momentarily speechless. Noticing Maria's amused yet exasperated look, Nagi huffed in frustration and picked up the diary she'd been reading. From this diary? Diary? Maria glanced at Nagi's empty hands, her expression growing increasingly puzzled. Nagi, are you feeling okay? There's nothing in your hands. Chapter 2, Characteristic, Wild Card. Nagi glanced at the notebook in her hand and immediately understood. I see, so it's that classic trope. Because she wasn't the owner of the notebook, she couldn't see its contents. Well, Maria isn't one of the chosen ones. It's perfectly normal that she can't see it. Is this child really starting again? Hearing Nagi's words, Maria instinctively felt like her young mistress was having another episode. Based on how severe the situation seemed, Maria could already estimate how much work it would cause her in the end. Maria prayed silently, hoping that this time Nagi's illness wouldn't be too troublesome. As for resisting or trying to talk her out of it, Maria had long given up. After all, Nagi's attention span was short. Once her interest waned, she'd undoubtedly return to her usual state. On that point, Maria was quite certain. Okay, so what's caught your attention this time? Someone I find really interesting. Nagi didn't bother correcting Maria's skeptical tone. Right now, all she needed was for Maria to investigate that person. Since Maria wasn't able to see the diary, explaining things to her would be pointless. What's their name? Emily Ren. How old are they? Somewhere between 15 and 17, I think. Where do they live? I don't know the exact address, but it's in Becca Town. Maria immediately felt something was off. She had the name, the approximate age, and even the city, Becca Town, a place infamous for its high crime rate. While many cities in the country had a high rate of criminal cases, Becca Town was among the worst. The fact that Nagi specifically mentioned it wasn't random, it had to mean something. But Maria was also certain that Nagi hadn't left the villa recently, nor had she met anyone named Amamiya Ren. Is she playing some new game again? Despite her doubts, Maria decided to look into it. The Sanzan In family's intelligence network was robust, with channels spanning the globe. They had the financial resources to maintain such a system, and soon enough, Maria had a file on Amamiya Ren, who matched the clues Nagi had given. It's a very straightforward life story, Maria muttered as she read the file. The report was detailed and to the point. Introverted, reserved, poor social skills, and no strong interpersonal connections. Relationships with classmates are average, with no close friends, no bad habits, no traceable online presence, orphaned and raised in an institution, with no records of his parents, works part-time on weekends to make ends meet, living in poverty, no bad habits, no online activity, poor social skills, no parents, living in poverty. He's practically a blank slate. Maria then glanced at the attached photo. Messy hair, glasses covering half his face, and unkempt. He doesn't seem to take care of his appearance very well. This must be why he struggles socially. The boy in the photo didn't look unattractive, but his lack of grooming made him appear ordinary. From Maria's perspective, though, his features were decent, he could even be considered handsome with a little effort. But another question lingered in her mind. Why is Nagi so interested in this boy? Maria found it puzzling. For Nagi to know his name, age, and general location, they must have some sort of connection. But this boy didn't seem like someone Nagi would associate with. It wasn't just about his background or status, there was simply no overlap between their worlds. Nagi often interacted online, but this boy left no traces there. So how had Nagi come to know him? Maria couldn't make sense of it. Meanwhile, in a modest apartment in Becca Town that was cheap due to a previous incident, Ren was taking a bath. After finishing, he sat down with his diary, treating it with a sense of reverence. Suddenly, more text appeared on the page in dark ink. First diary entry completed, achievement unlocked, first time, roulette prize pool unlocked, a shadowy image of a massive roulette wheel materialized before him. The wheel had a pointer, and its surface was divided into numerous segments, each labeled with a name: Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, Tokyo Hitman Reborn, Nejima. Magister Negi Magi, A certain magical index, Persona, Demon's Lair, Kenichi, The Mightiest Disciple, Marvel, Genshin Impact, Fate, High School DxD, Grave Robbers Chronicles, Lord of Mysteries. The list was extensive, and many of the options were familiar and exciting to Ren. However, there was one he couldn't accept. Please, anything but Grave Robbers Chronicles. Ren clasped his hands together and prayed fervently. He had heard of Grave Robbers Chronicles before his reincarnation but had never read it himself. Its reputation preceded it, known for its intense and chaotic plot lines. While he hadn't read the series, he knew enough to be wary of its madness. It was said to be even more unsettling than Lord of Mysteries. I don't want to lose my mind because of a random spin, he muttered. I'm just an ordinary guy, I can't handle something like that. After finishing his prayer, Ren lightly tapped the roulette wheel. It began spinning rapidly, its speed almost dizzying. Gradually, it slowed down and came to a stop. The pointer landed on Persona. Acquired characteristic, wildcard, wildcard? Is that the trait that lets the protagonist of Persona use multiple Persona masks? Ren understood the reference but couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. So praying doesn't improve my luck after all. He carefully examined the description of wildcard. Wildcard, the ability to accommodate multiple distinct personalities while maintaining the integrity of one's own unique personality. Well, it does match the protagonist's ability in Persona. Personas are fragments of one's personality, representing different emotions and consciousness. Normally, someone can only awaken a single persona. But the protagonist, with the wildcard trait, can wield multiple personas. He mulled over its implications. In this world, it might just mean I won't develop mental illnesses. If it preserved the integrity of his personality, it could prevent conditions like schizophrenia. But in a normal world, unless someone was under extreme pressure, most people wouldn't develop severe mental disorders. It's useful, I guess, but not by much, he concluded. Chapter 3, Working at Tropical Land. Speaking of which, should I start burning incense before writing my diary next time? Maybe I wasn't pious enough today because I didn't offer anything. The more Ren thought about it, the more it made sense. He decided that tomorrow morning, before writing his diary, he would take a bath, burn incense, and draw the prize in his best condition. Maybe that would increase his chances of hitting the jackpot. Then he suddenly remembered, tomorrow was the weekend, his part-time job day. Let's see. He pulled out his phone and checked his schedule. Sure enough, tomorrow was a work day, and it was at a place he dreaded going. Working as a mascot at Tropical Land. That place where the death god and the angel often hang out. It's also a hotspot for trouble. I really don't want to go. Even though 16 years had passed since his previous life, the tragic events at Tropical Land in Detective Conan still lingered in his mind. The decapitation case that occurred there was particularly unforgettable. But this time, he couldn't skip his part-time job. The pay was simply too good to pass up. Working 8 hours a day for 100,000 yen, 12,500 yen per hour was a very high wage. Honestly, if it weren't for the tempting salary, Ren would have turned down this job without a second thought. Forget it. The money's worth it. It's okay to endure a little discomfort for money. While 100,000 yen might not mean much to an average family, it was a considerable amount for someone like him who lived paycheck to paycheck. Although Tropical Land carried its risks, the job seemed manageable. Ren convinced himself that nothing too serious would happen during his shift. Having made up his mind, he continued scrolling through his phone to check the job details. Wear a mascot costume, hand out balloons to kids, and take photos with guests. Mascot costumes? They're probably bulky and heavy. The weather's fine now, but wearing one of those will definitely be exhausting. I'd better go to bed early tonight. Ren was a firm believer in staying well rested for work, and he had developed a habit of maintaining a consistent sleep schedule. With nothing else to study or prepare for, he decided to call it a day and head to bed. Placing his phone on the nightstand, Ren lay down and fell asleep almost instantly. He always went to bed early, no later than 10 p.m. and tonight was no exception. Not only was going to bed early good for his health, but it was also a necessary precaution in his current living situation. In Becca Town, the best rental apartments weren't the ones with flashy exteriors or modern amenities. Most well-lit, nicely decorated, and affordable apartments had dark histories. In Becca, murder houses were the cheapest options. If you were lucky, you could snag a bargain. For example, Ren's current apartment was a luxury unit on a high floor with excellent decor, rented at just 10,000 yen per month. It even included free utilities. However, the cheap rent came with a catch. The place had a serious history. To be precise, there were 3 souls haunting the apartment. Initially, Ren had been hesitant to rent it, but the low price and free utilities were too tempting to pass up. So, he'd rented the place for 2 years. This was his second year living there. Thankfully, He'd managed to live peacefully so far by sticking to a strict routine, going to bed early and waking up early to avoid overlapping with the spirit's active hours. This arrangement had allowed him to coexist with the souls without any major incidents. The next morning, the weather was clear and pleasant. Ren's first task upon waking was to greet the spirits. "Good morning. Looks like we made it through another peaceful day." After some simple preparations, he grabbed his bag and left for work. Tropical Land was one of Bika City's largest amusement parks, featuring numerous attractions and entertainment zones. With its steady influx of tourists, it was also a popular place to work part-time. At least, that's how most people saw it. For Ren, however, it was a potential danger zone. Large, crowded places like this always seem to attract the death god. Upon arriving at the park, Ren followed the registration procedures and was allowed entry. The park had a system where workers were pre-registered, eliminating the need for individual check-ins on the day of work. Once inside, Ren headed straight to his assigned location to meet his supervisor. "Nice to meet you, Amamiya," said a female manager who appeared to be in her 30s. She had a kind demeanor, but signs of overwork were evident on her face. This was an ice cream shop of some scale, situated within the park. Such shops were reportedly quite profitable in amusement parks. Ren gave a polite bow. "Hello." The manager studied him for a moment and seemed relieved. "As I was told, you're not much of a talker." "That's good. I prefer workers who don't talk too much, especially for mascot roles." Ren understood her point. In this line of work, being reserved was actually an advantage. "I won't waste your time with unnecessary details. Let me explain your hours and tasks." The manager quickly outlined his schedule and responsibilities. "You'll work from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., followed by a lunch break. Afternoon shifts run from 1:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Your duties include handing out promotional flyers, giving balloons to kids, and taking photos with guests." "Got it?" The instructions were straightforward, and Ren nodded slightly. "Got it." The manager glanced at the clock. There was still some time before his shift officially began. "It's not time to start yet. Go to the dressing room, put your things away, and try on the mascot costume." Ren complied without complaint and made his way to the dressing room at the back. Inside, several large mascot costumes were hanging, each in different sizes to accommodate various workers. He chose a mouse costume with a hat, big round eyes, and a chubby mouth. It was adorable and seemed like the kind of character kids would love. "I just hope there won't be too many accidents today." Chapter 4, The Young Ladies Gather at Tropical Land. Tropical Land opened its gates at 9 a.m. on weekends. The park was already bustling, with many people lined up outside to buy tickets. "Dear guests, thank you for your patience. The park is now open. Please queue up in an orderly manner to enter." As the announcement played, the waiting crowd surged into the amusement park, filling it with life and energy. Most attractions and facilities in the park were already prepared to welcome the influx of visitors, ensuring everything ran smoothly even with the sudden rush of people. However, the food and beverage stalls weren't as popular right away. Since amusement park food was relatively expensive and most people had eaten breakfast before arriving, the food stalls typically didn't see much business until about an hour after the park opened. Meanwhile, staff members dressed in mascot costumes began appearing throughout the park, handing out flyers and interacting with guests. Naturally, Ren was among them. "Excuse me, could I have a balloon, please?" Hearing the soft voice behind him, Ren quickly turned around, picked up a balloon from the stack beside him, and handed it to the source of the voice. Through the limited field of vision in his mascot costume, he saw a young girl wearing a dark purple kimono. Her hair was styled in an elegant purple princess cut, and her voice was soft and sweet, carrying a refined tone that hinted at her noble upbringing. Even though her kimono was simple in design, it was clear from the fabric and craftsmanship that it was expensive. "Thank you." The little girl thanked him politely, instantly earning Ren's favor. Polite children were endearing no matter the circumstances. As the girl turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, Ren returned to his work. The purple-haired girl didn't go far, however. She was escorted by a group of attendants to a large, secluded work van parked within the park. "Miss Izumi, please step inside." "Yes." The little girl entered the van, her face lighting up with a bright smile as she spotted her friend inside. "Nagi-chan. You're here, Izumi." Nagi beamed as she greeted her friend, taking her hand and leading her to sit on the plush sofa at the back of the van. "Well, Izumi, what do you think? Doesn't that man seem a little unusual?" "Yes, he does seem a bit strange." Seijinamiya Izumi recalled the encounter and nodded thoughtfully. The man seemed lifeless, yet he didn't exude the aura of someone destined for death. What's more, there were 3 spirits lingering around him, but none of them seemed intent on harming him. It was a bizarre situation. Still, Izumi couldn't help but feel puzzled. "How did you come to know this man, Nagi-chan? Nagi chuckled and held up the diary that only she could see. It's because I have this diary. It contains the thoughts and writings of that man. Hearing this, a flash of curiosity crossed Izami's eyes. She concentrated her spiritual power, attempting to discern the nature of the diary. However, despite her efforts, the diary remained invisible to her. So, this time, it's something beyond my abilities. Unlike Maria, Izami had no reason to doubt Nagi's words. She trusted her friend implicitly and was certain that the diary was real, even if she couldn't see it herself. Combining the strange situation surrounding the man with Nagi's diary, Izami concluded that there was indeed some sort of connection between Nagi and the man. Otherwise, how could Nagi know so much about him? With this thought, Izami settled herself more comfortably beside Nagi. So, Nagi-chan, your plan is to observe this man's actions today and compare them with the contents of his diary to see if there are any inconsistencies? Nagi's face lit up with delight. Exactly. He mentioned 2 names in his diary, Shido Masayoshi and Ikigoro. He wrote that he's already confirmed these 2 people don't exist in this world. He also claimed that our world is just a story, though he provided explanations about the reality of this world as well. I see. So that's why you're so interested in him. Izami nodded in understanding. She wasn't entirely sure about the authenticity of the diary's contents, but it was clear that Nagi found the topic fascinating. Her gaze returned to the monitor displaying the man in the mascot costume. Well, it seems you've found the right person this time, Nagi-chan. There's definitely something unusual about him. So, are you planning to just sit here and watch him all day? Of course not. Nagi waved her hand dismissively, a bored expression crossing her face. Izami, you, Maria, and I are going to explore the amusement park instead. We'll leave the monitoring to Klaus. Klaus, who had been silently standing behind them, had a look of confusion on his face. Miss, but your safety and Miss Izami's. That's what Maria is for. Don't worry, Maria is far more capable than you think. I wouldn't be surprised if she knew some kind of assassination techniques. Ordinary people wouldn't stand a chance against her. Maria, who had just been burdened with such high expectations, felt her blood pressure rise. Why on earth would an ordinary maid like her know assassination techniques? Still, knowing Nagi's personality, Maria chose not to argue. Instead, she gave the nearby bodyguards a meaningful glance, silently instructing them to keep a close eye on the girls. The bodyguards, experienced and professional, quickly understood Maria's intentions. While Nagi and Izami were busy planning their day, 2 other young ladies arrived at the entrance of Tropical Land. As the car doors opened, the 2 girls stepped out simultaneously. Their gazes met, and surprise flashed across their faces. Neither had expected to see the other here. Long time no see, Ms. Suzuki. The black-haired girl, her expression icy and reserved, spoke first. Her words were polite, but her tone was distant. And you, Miss Ice Queen? What are you doing at an amusement park? I didn't think you had a playful side. The brown-haired girl regarded her counterpart with a mix of helplessness and disdain. To be honest, this was the last person she wanted to encounter. Whenever she spoke to this girl, it felt like talking to a frozen doll, her face devoid of any emotion. Chapter 5, The Mrs. Lottery. It's just a bit of relaxation during the holidays. Even though I don't particularly enjoy going out, it's necessary to get some fresh air every now and then. Who are you trying to fool? Suzuki Sanoko couldn't recall a single instance where this person ever came to an amusement park just to get some fresh air. However, she didn't call her out directly. There was no need to waste words on someone like this. Besides, Sanoko had other priorities today. Well, enjoy your fresh air then. She turned to her chauffeur. Uncle Ryo, pick me up in the evening. Yes, miss. After speaking with her driver, Sanoko walked straight into Tropical Land. Meanwhile, the other young lady, Shinomiya Kaguya, dubbed the Ice Queen, was quietly reminded by her maid. Miss Kaguya, it's rare for you to take a day off. Please don't waste it. From the maid's tone, it was clear she was even more impatient than her master. Hayasaka, Kaguya said in a cold voice. Don't you find it suspicious that Miss Suzuki is here as well? Her brow furrowed slightly, and her fingers nervously twitched. Could she be looking for the same person as me? Hayasaka I nodded lightly. If you aren't imagining things, miss, then it's possible your experience isn't unique. Just as you're here to confirm that person's existence, others might have the same idea. Kaguya fell silent, deep in thought. Let's head inside. Today's goal is just to confirm the authenticity of this person. Don't let him notice us. If he sees me, he'll likely figure out that I also possess a diary. Understood, miss. I've made the necessary arrangements. Hayasaka bowed slightly, exuding an air of readiness. To ensure Kaguya wouldn't be seen by the person she sought, Hayasaka had already stationed a motorhome in a nearby parking spot. Inside the amusement park, she had arranged for multiple individuals to act as their eyes. Once inside Tropical Land, Suzuki put on a pair of sunglasses and kept her eyes glued to the entrance. Before long, she spotted her target, Shinichi Kudo and Ran Mori, entering the park together. While all this was happening, Ren was still busy handing out flyers and balloons to the numerous children visiting the park. The weekend crowd meant there were far more kids than usual, and many of them wanted balloons. Ren soon found himself running out and had to go fetch another batch of balloons to hand out. The morning shift flew by, and before he knew it, it was lunchtime. At noon, Ren headed to the staff area to eat. The park provided lunch for workers, so he didn't have to prepare anything elaborate himself. His meal was simple: glutinous rice balls sprinkled with sugar, 2 large rice balls, and 2 bottles of electrolyte drinks to replenish his energy. There's nothing unusual so far, Ren muttered to himself, wiping sweat from his brow. His clothes were damp and clung to his body from the morning's work. Even though this is Tropical Land, it seems like I've avoided running into the death god today. The thought alone made his rice balls taste sweeter. No one's noticed the diary yet, have they? Is this different from what I imagined? Maybe it's not one of those exposure flow scenarios after all. It was too early to draw conclusions. After all, he'd only written 1 entry in the diary so far. He figured he'd need to write a few more before anything significant happened. I've got some time before my afternoon shift. Might as well write about what happened this morning. With that, Ren pulled a pen and his diary from his backpack while sitting in the locker room. Diary entry: today is a part-time job day, and the location is Tropical Land. My work involves distributing flyers and balloons while wearing a heavy mascot costume. This job isn't as easy as I thought it'd be. The mascot costume is much heavier than I expected, but that's not the main issue. The key point is that I didn't encounter the death god today. If I had, this shift would have been a lot more troublesome. Well, there wasn't much of note this morning. Nothing complicated happened, and I didn't notice any special people in Tropical Land. Maybe they're avoiding me, or maybe no one's noticed me yet. There's still a lot of speculation to be made, but if this really is an exposure flow, then based on what I know, people who read the diary should receive some kind of reward, just like how I get rewards for writing in it. Whether the rewards are good or bad is probably random. After writing the last sentence, Ren closed the diary. He hadn't finished his diary for the day, so he couldn't draw any rewards just yet. Besides, he'd already decided yesterday to perform some rituals before his next lottery draw. He planned to take a bath, burn incense, and make offerings to see if he could influence his luck. Meanwhile, the 2 young ladies who also possessed diaries felt theirs vibrate. Opening them, they saw the updated content. So, there are rewards for reading the diary? How cliché, Nagi muttered, a grin spreading across her face. Flipping through the latest diary entry, Nagi couldn't help but marvel at how this setup resembled those classic tropes from the time travel novels she'd read in the past. Completed reading the first day's diary, achievement unlocked, first day, reward pool unlocked. Nagi's eyes sparkled with excitement. This is my chance to prove the diary's existence to Maria and Izumi. If I can draw something tangible, I can show it to them. Maria, is there a quieter place in the amusement park? I don't want the bodyguards seeing what's about to happen. Although Maria didn't fully understand, she responded calmly. There's a motorhome near the work vehicle Klaus prepared. It's meant for your afternoon nap. Perfect. Let's head there now. Chapter 6, Vision. The RV was parked just 30 meters away from the work vehicle, a distance that ensured its safety and privacy. Inside the RV were Nagi, Izumi, and Maria. All right, let's get started. Nagi's eyes sparkled with excitement as she prepared for the lottery. She loved games like this. Placing the diary on the bed, she initiated the lottery. Immediately, a large roulette wheel appeared before her, spinning rapidly as soon as she touched it. Nagi watched nervously, her gaze fixed on the wheel as it gradually slowed down. Finally, the pointer stopped. Genshin Impact, the result was displayed clearly, followed by another line, obtain the vision, wind. As the words appeared, an amulet with a gemstone materialized before her. Nagi's eyes widened in amazement, her excitement barely contained. Maria. Look. I told you it's real. Maria stared at the scene in shock, momentarily speechless. She had always assumed this was just one of Nagi's delusions, but now she had no choice but to accept that it was real. Meanwhile, Izumi focused her spiritual energy into her eyes. When Nagi touched the amulet, Izumi could see a flow of blue wind-like energy being drawn from the pendant into Nagi's body. The energy gradually increased until it reached the level of a meteor spirit before stabilizing. The power is real, Izumi muttered. But it all comes from the amulet. It absorbs energy and transforms it, transferring it to Nagi's body. Izumi confirmed that the power wasn't an illusion, it was genuine, but entirely reliant on the pendant. Wow! As Nagi held the amulet, she felt an instinctive connection to the wind, as though she could control it at will. Instead of using the power immediately, she turned to the diary for clarification. Sure enough, the diary displayed a description: vision, wind, blessed by the gaze of a god. The vision is a jeweled amulet granted as recognition. It allows the wielder to channel and control elemental power by absorbing external energy, so, I can control the wind. How? As soon as Nagi spoke, the air inside the RV seemed to respond. Invisible gusts began to swirl around her, moving as though alive. Wow! Nagi's eyes sparkled as she watched the wind surround her. She raised her hand, instinctively gathering the gusts into her palm. How? The swirling air condensed into a visible sphere in her hand, as if obediently awaiting her command. Curious, she moved the sphere of wind closer to the RV's wall. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The moment the wind touched the wall, it emitted a sound like tearing metal. Startled, Nagi pulled her hand back and noticed that the wall now bore a shallow, circular dent. This is amazing. Initially startled, Nagi's face soon broke into a wide grin. She felt like a child who had just discovered a new toy. Despite her wealthy upbringing and access to countless luxuries, this was her first time experiencing something straight out of an anime. Nagi, this is an enclosed space. If you're not careful, you might blow up the RV, Izumi cautioned. Nagi's hands trembled, nearly dropping the sphere of wind. Fortunately, she managed to regain control in time. Carefully, she dispersed the wind, letting it dissipate little by little. The process took nearly 5 minutes, leaving Nagi both physically and mentally exhausted. But even as she panted from the effort, her face glowed with excitement. Maria, see? I wasn't lying. Maria sighed, still processing what she had witnessed. I didn't expect this to be real. It was the first time Maria had encountered something so extraordinary. Nagi had gained a power far beyond what normal people could comprehend. The ability to control wind at will. If your grandfather finds out, he's going to be devastated, Maria muttered, rubbing her temples. Before, you wouldn't listen to him because you had no power. Now that you do, you'll probably listen to him even less. Maria could already imagine her master shedding tears over this new development. But more than her master, Maria worried about Nagi herself. Ah! Nagi is going to be even more of a handful from now on, she sighed. Maria felt as though she would never be able to leave Nagi's side. Without someone to guide her, the entire Sanzan-in family might end up dealing with the chaos caused by Nagi's newfound powers. This was just the first power Nagi had gained from the diary. If the diary could grant such abilities so easily, who knew what else Nagi might acquire in the future? If she didn't learn how to control herself, the consequences could be catastrophic. Nagi, you're allowed to gain power, but you must never throw away that amulet. Huh? That amulet isn't granting you power directly. It's a tool that lets you channel and control wind. Without it, you won't be able to use your abilities. Nagi tilted her head, confused by Izumi's words. But as Izumi explained, Nagi's confusion turned into suspicion. The diary had already mentioned that the vision was a medium for controlling elemental power. Without it, she wouldn't be able to manipulate the wind. But how did Izumi know that? Izumi, how do you know all this? Huh? This time, it was Izumi's turn to freeze. The amulet absorbs external energy and converts it into elemental power I can control. But I haven't told you that yet. Nagi's sudden question left Izumi flustered. Should she reveal the truth about herself? After all, it seemed like Nagi might be afraid of what she'd learn. Chapter 7, I like you the most Izumi, are you hiding something from me? Seeing Izumi's hesitant expression, Nagi could tell immediately that her friend was keeping something from her. Nagi's questioning left Izumi visibly conflicted. Nagi. But before Izumi could say anything, Nagi cut her off. Forget it. Just as Izumi seemed ready to confess, Nagi chose to drop the matter. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I just needed to know that you and I are in the same boat. Nagi wasn't the type to push too hard, especially when it came to her closest and most trusted friend. She felt there was no need to press Izumi further. Some things, she believed, would come to light naturally in time. Nagi. Izumi's heart wavered at Nagi's response, and her voice softened. Since you've already come into contact with these things, you'll inevitably encounter them again in the future. Maybe it's better if I tell you now rather than keep hiding it. The unknown always breeds fear. If Nagi were to face these things unprepared, the consequences could be worse. Nagi-chan, there are special powers in this world, and there are also evil spirits that wield them. Evil spirits? Ghosts? Yes. Nagi-chan, I know how much you're afraid of these things, which is why I never told you before. I see. Indeed, Nagi's greatest fear was anything related to ghosts or the supernatural. Even just hearing about them made her legs feel weak. Still, she reached out and placed her hands firmly on Izumi's shoulders. What about you? Me? Izumi blinked, confused by the sudden question. We're the same age, right? I'm terrified of ghosts, but what about you? Aren't you afraid of them? Izumi hesitated before nodding slightly. I was scared at first. I didn't know what to do when I encountered them. But as I kept facing them, I gradually learned how to use my power. Even so, during my exorcisms, I met people who feared me because of my abilities. That's when I realized people fear what they don't understand. As long as they can't control it, that fear will never go away. So that's why you didn't want me to know? Nagi took a deep breath, then reached out and pinched Izumi's cheeks with both hands. Izumi, I would never be afraid of you. You're not some monster people should fear. You're a knight, someone who steps up to help others when they're in trouble. This is your punishment for not trusting me. If anything like this happens again, you have to tell me. We're best friends, aren't we? Okay, Nagi-chan. I promise to tell you next time. Looking into Nagi's sincere eyes, Izumi felt a weight lift from her heart. She didn't even mind Nagi pinching her cheeks. Instead, she stepped forward and hugged her tightly. Nagi-chan, I like you the most. Huh? Why are you saying that all of a sudden? But I like you the most too, Izumi. Nagi's face flushed at the sudden confession, but she didn't shy away from admitting her feelings in return. The invisible barrier that had existed between them shattered in an instant, and the two reaffirmed their bond as best friends. Ah, Nagi and Izumi really are close, Maria commented, watching the scene with a smile. Since she had started taking care of Nagi, Maria had always noticed how close Nagi and Izumi were. Nagi loved sharing her favorite anime plots with those around her, and she even drew her own manga from time to time. Although Maria often found Nagi's manga a bit surreal, Izumi was the only one who could fully appreciate both the stories and the art. The two often discussed them in great detail. Perhaps that was why they had such a strong connection. And now, their bond seemed even deeper. After the emotional moment, Nagi quickly shifted the topic, clearly uncomfortable with the lingering atmosphere. By the way, Izumi, what do you think of this diary? I'm not sure, Izumi admitted, shaking her head. This whole thing is strange. From what you've told me, just reading the diary grants you a chance to win something in a lottery. And the rewards? They're absurdly powerful. The effort and the return aren't proportional at all. The balance was completely skewed, too little was given, and far too much was gained. It's basically getting something for nothing, Izumi added. Not only is the diary strange, but the person who wrote it is just as odd, she continued. That man wrote his name without any hesitation, practically inviting people to investigate him. Anyone who can dig up information on him could easily figure out what he's been up to. It's almost as if he's deliberately setting a trap. Why would he write his name in the first place? Izumi found it baffling. He could have hidden his identity and gained a significant advantage by doing so. True, Nagi agreed, her expression thoughtful. Revealing his identity so openly is practically asking for trouble. Normally, you'd keep your identity a secret until you were strong enough to protect yourself. Only then would it be safe to reveal anything. If someone realizes how valuable the diary is and decides to control the person who wrote it, that person would be in serious danger. Having faced numerous kidnapping attempts since childhood, Nagi understood all too well the dark side of human nature. For money, people were willing to do anything. And now, with the promise of supernatural power, even more people would likely cross the line of morality. That man must know this, Izumi said. And earlier today, after reading his diary, he even mentioned the lottery rewards. That wasn't a coincidence, it was intentional. So, he's fishing, huh? Chapter 8, Kaguya of Ice is easy. In a secluded corner far from the bustling crowd, a motorhome stood eerily still, its surface emitting a faint chill. The entire vehicle appeared as if it had just been removed from a deep freezer. Bang! The door rattled slightly, but the thick layer of ice encasing the vehicle didn't budge. Bang! With a louder crash from inside, the door flew off its hinges. A blonde-haired girl stumbled out of the opening, her exposed skin faintly bruised from the freezing air. She collapsed to the ground, shivering violently, and wrapped her arms around herself in an attempt to generate some warmth and raise her dangerously low body temperature. Thankfully, the outside temperature was much warmer than inside the vehicle. Had it been any colder, she might have passed out from hypothermia. Moments later, another figure emerged from the motorhome. Half of her body was encased in pristine white ice, yet she moved effortlessly, entirely unaffected by the cold. Hayasaka. Kaguya. Miss Kaguya. Hayasaka sprawled on the ground, raised a trembling hand to stop the young lady from approaching. The air seemed to grow colder with every step Kaguya took. You need to control it first. Kaguya's usually stoic expression softened slightly, But her body temperature was shockingly low. Her exposed skin was so cold it could instantly freeze anything it touched. This sudden transformation was the result of a special power she had obtained from the mysterious diary. Kaguya looked at Hayasaka and hesitated, unable to approach her. Instead, she focused on controlling the newfound freezing power coursing through her. She could feel the energy within her, it was hers to command, but mastering it would take time. Gradually, the ice on her body began to melt, and the temperature around her stabilized. Meanwhile, Hayasaka slowly recovered from her near frostbite. Her body warmed up, though a lingering chill still clung to her. Aku. As her temperature returned to normal, Hayasaka sneezed, then glanced at the frozen motorhome. Clearly, it wouldn't be usable anytime soon. Good thing this spot is remote and out of sight. If anyone saw this, Miss Kaguya's situation would definitely be exposed. Exposure. That might not be a bad thing. Kaguya's voice was calm, lacking its usual aloofness. In front of Hayasaka, she allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. Hayasaka paused, understanding the implication behind Kaguya's words. Miss Kaguya, are you planning to inform the head of the family about this? No. It's not impossible, but it's too early. Hayasaka knew that while Kaguya had gained extraordinary power, it wasn't yet time to act. Miss Kaguya, will you abandon the inheritance? Or will you seize it? Kaguya fell silent, unable to answer immediately. Hayasaka continued, her tone steady. Miss Kaguya, you've always had the potential to inherit the Shinomiya family, but your chances were slim because your brothers held all the power. But now, with this new ability, you have the means to overturn everything. You are no longer bound by their control. The question is, do you want to claim the inheritance? Are you ready for it? Hayasaka's pointed questions left Kaguya deep in thought. For as long as she could remember, she had never considered herself a contender for the Shinomiya family's inheritance. Her role was predetermined, a pawn to be married off. The idea of succession had never crossed her mind. But now, everything had changed. A once helpless princess had gained the power of an empress. And with the power of an empress came the right to claim everything. Even if her personal abilities couldn't match her brothers, her newfound strength alone was enough to overshadow them. Revealing her abilities would instantly make her the strongest candidate for the inheritance. But was she truly prepared for that? No. Let's set it aside for now. Kaguya shook her head. The leap was too great for her to make all at once. This power gives me confidence, but I haven't mastered it yet. It's too early to act now. She understood where her newfound confidence came from and knew she wasn't ready to reveal herself. It's wise to wait, Ms. Kaguya. When the time comes, you'll need to show your strength without hesitation. Half measures like today won't suffice. Hayasaka's advice was practical. Uncontrolled power wouldn't intimidate anyone. Only with mastery and resolve could Kaguya make her move. For now, Ms. Kaguya, the key lies with that person. That person? Yes, the one connected to the diary. They are the source of your power, and their role in all of this is crucial. Kaguya's eyes widened slightly as realization dawned on her. Yes. That person is the key. Taking a deep breath, Kaguya acknowledged the importance of the mysterious individual. Hayasaka, should we try to contact them directly? That would be unwise. Hayasaka shook her head. Think carefully, Ms. Kaguya. Why did they reveal their name and location? If the diary grants power, then what about the one writing it? Kaguya froze, startled by the question. She had overlooked this detail. Why had they exposed themselves? If writing the diary could grant power, they could have easily kept their identity hidden. So, what's their goal? Kaguya's mind raced, her unease growing as she realized the truth. And for the first time, she questioned the intentions behind the diary. Chapter 9, The Sirens. Before leaving work, it was 5 p.m. After working for 3.5 hours, Ren's shift was finally nearing its end. By now, most of the children had been taken home by their parents, and his work as a mascot was essentially over. This granted Ren a half-hour break before he could officially clock out. Good job today, Amamiya, the female store manager said, visibly pleased with his performance. You've been working hard all day without much slacking off. Though her tone was friendly, her words carried weight. The store manager wasn't blind. She had noticed that Ren was the kind of worker who quietly focused on his tasks without unnecessary chatter or laziness. Amamiya, you've got another half-hour of rest now. Are you sure that's okay? It's fine, the store manager replied after glancing at the store's current situation. She nodded in satisfaction, considering the day's customer flow and how busy they had been. Today's customer turnout was higher than usual for a weekend. We've even sold out many of the ice cream flavors. I'd say a lot of it is thanks to your work attracting customers. Ice cream, after all, was primarily aimed at children. Girls tended to avoid it because they worried about their weight, and boys rarely bought it unless accompanied by someone. On the other hand, adults bringing their kids to the park often ended up buying treats for themselves too. The flyers and balloons distributed by the mascots were quite effective. Even if the flyers only worked within the amusement park, they still encouraged people to stop by the ice cream shop. Comparing today's foot traffic to that of a regular weekend made it clear that Ren's efforts had made a difference. The store manager withdrew her gaze and continued, "We're almost done for the day. Let's see how things go over the next half hour. If we sell out the remaining ice cream, your work will be done for the day. Don't worry, I'll pay you as agreed." "Thank you," Ren replied politely. In the dressing room, Ren took off the heavy mascot costume. His clothes were soaked with sweat, which wasn't surprising. The costume was bulky, and Ren had worked hard all day. Under such conditions, it was impossible not to sweat. "Today went a lot smoother than I expected," he muttered. "Or maybe I didn't notice them even if they were already nearby." Ren had no way of knowing if someone who had read his diary had come to observe him. "Was I too reckless?" he thought, frowning. Looking back, exposing his name in the diary seemed like a rash decision. However, it had been part of his effort to test the diary's rules. The truth was, Ren didn't fully understand how the diary worked. The diary itself offered no instructions or limitations, making it seem as though there were no rules at all. But that couldn't be true. In most exposure flow scenarios, there were always some restrictions. Either the diary holder could control who saw it, or the writer retained some authority over it. His diary, however, was a record of his daily life. If writing in it was the key to drawing rewards, did the amount of personal information he revealed influence the quality of those rewards? He couldn't help but dwell on this question. Yesterday, he had impulsively exposed his name while testing the diary. Now, he couldn't shake the feeling that it had been a mistake. "If I don't draw something good today, it'll feel like a huge loss." Was the wild card trait he drew yesterday really that bad? In hindsight, no, it wasn't bad at all. Wild card was actually a highly versatile skill. It allowed him to accommodate multiple personalities while maintaining the uniqueness of his core identity. Ren understood its potential. If paired with personality masks, it would be a game-changing ability. Most people could only use one personality mask, but wild card would allow him to switch between multiple masks, giving him a massive advantage in combat. The trait was essentially a tool for overcoming weaknesses and adapting to different situations. The only downside was that he didn't have any personality masks to pair with it yet. Still, Ren tried to convince himself that the trait wasn't useless. His bigger concern was the possibility of being captured and forced to write daily diaries as a tool for someone else. But for now, at least, he seemed safe. If this follows the typical rules of an exposure flow, the diary won't be distributed widely at first. The number of people who see it will likely increase gradually over time. If that's the case, the few people who've read my diary so far probably won't act rashly. Ren sighed, leaning back in his chair. This was such a reckless move. I hope everything turns out as I predicted. He clung to the hope that yesterday's reward wasn't useless and that today's draw might bring him something complimentary. But that was something he wouldn't know until he finished his diary entry tonight. For now, Ren stayed in the locker room, resting and looking forward to going home. His expectations, however, were shattered after half an hour. Beep. Woo. Woo. The piercing sound of police sirens echoed from the park entrance. Still seated in the locker room, Ren immediately tensed. An inexplicable sense of unease washed over him. About 5 minutes later, the door to the locker room swung open. The female store manager stood there, her face grim. This is really bad. Amamiya, you can pack up your things. You don't need to keep working. Manager, what's going on outside? Why are the police here? Despite his instinct to avoid trouble, Ren felt it was better to know what was happening. What else could it be? There's been a murder, something happened on the roller coaster. A roller coaster murder case, Ren muttered, his eyes widening. He immediately realized what the police sirens were for. The murder at the start of the story. Chapter 10, The Unreachable Death. Amamiya, here's your salary. Contact me if you want to work again. Thank you, manager. Ren accepted the envelope of cash with a polite nod before turning to leave. The female store manager watched his retreating figure and sighed softly. He's such a good kid. With his pay in hand, Ren didn't leave Tropical Land immediately. Although he disliked unnecessary trouble, he couldn't resist the urge to witness the famous roller coaster murder case from a safe distance. After all, it was a significant event tied to the death god. There was no need to approach the crime scene. Ren found an empty spot nearby where he could sit and observe. It also gave him the perfect opportunity to update his diary. Diary entry: my luck today has been terrible. I came to Tropical Land for work, thinking nothing would go wrong, only to have trouble appear at the very end. The roller coaster murder case. I didn't expect to witness the iconic incident from the original plot. The Death God truly is the source of Beckatown's endless crime waves. Unfortunately, I'll likely encounter many more cases in the future. As a resident of Beckatown and a student of Titton High School, murder cases will inevitably cross my path. But as long as it doesn't concern me, I'll make sure not to get involved. It'd be nice if I could take photos or videos of this moment, Ren muttered to himself. To his surprise, the diary responded with a new line of text. Photos and videos can be added to the diary content. Ren blinked, stunned. Huh, so I have to think about the diary's features to unlock them? It seemed the diary didn't offer any guidance on its own. Ren had to explore its functions through trial and error. He thought back to the year he had spent without writing in it. The diary had remained dormant the entire time, which confirmed it wasn't a mandatory task. But once he began using it, the rewards were too enticing to ignore. And when benefits were involved, human greed inevitably followed. Pushing aside unnecessary thoughts, Ren focused on experimenting with the newly revealed photography and video features. Photography mode, recording mode, there were no physical buttons to activate these modes. Simply thinking about them enabled the functions. The diary allowed him to capture what he saw with his eyes or even create shots from various angles. He also discovered that the photos and videos didn't need to be added to the diary. They could be stored separately without taking up memory, making the feature even more versatile. Satisfied, Ren tested the feature. From his seat by the roadside, he locked his gaze on the roller coaster area, which was cordoned off by police. With a single thought, he captured a photo that appeared as if it had been taken from up close. He added the photo to his diary entry. The photography function is excellent, and the clarity of the images is incredibly high. This feature is genuinely impressive. Now, all that's left is to wait. An hour passed. The police team investigating the roller coaster murder began to leave, though a few officers stayed behind to handle the aftermath. It was clear that the roller coaster wouldn't be operational for the rest of the day. While observing from a distance, Ren noticed three familiar figures exiting the roller coaster area, a young man and two girls. The two girls looked pale and nauseous, one of them even retching occasionally. In contrast, the young man seemed completely unfazed, full of energy as he walked. Today was the worst. I came to an amusement park and ended up seeing a decapitated body. Ugh. Sanoko shuddered at the memory, recalling the headless corpse on the roller coaster and the severed head discovered in the passage. She felt her stomach churn and nearly vomited again. Sanoko, please don't talk about it anymore. Ran sitting next to her, also looked queasy. Unlike Sanoko, Ran had been closer to the body. She could still feel the sensation of blood splattering on her neck. Covering her mouth, she fought the urge to retch again. Is it really that bad? Shinichi Kudo glanced at the two girls helplessly. You'll get used to it eventually. Get used to it? Sanoko glared at him, her frustration boiling over. Who in their right mind would get used to seeing corpses? We're not detectives or medical examiners. Huh? Before Sanoko could continue her tirade, Shinichi's peripheral vision caught sight of a man in a black suit and a round hat. We saw him on the roller coaster earlier. Where's the other one? The detective's instincts flared. The man exuded an air of danger, his cold demeanor unshaken by the murder scene. There's something off about those two. Without hesitation, Shinichi broke into a run, chasing after the man. As he sprinted, he called back to the girls, Ran, take Sanoko home. I have something urgent to do. Eh? Sanoko stared at him in disbelief. What the hell is wrong with that guy? Leaving them behind in an amusement park where a murder had just occurred, Shinichi dashed off without any further explanation. Fuming, Sanoko grabbed Ran's hand. Come on, Ran. Let's catch up to that idiot and give him a piece of our minds. Eh? Ran barely had time to react as Sanoko pulled her along. But before they could take more than a few steps, their shoelaces snapped simultaneously, causing them to stumble. No way. Sanoko stared at her broken shoelaces, then noticed that Ran's had also torn. Ran froze, staring at her shoes, then at Shinichi disappearing into the crowd. A sinking feeling welled up inside her. This entire sequence was captured by Ran. Chapter 11, Going home and waiting for the diary update. In the original story, it was only Ran who broke her shoelaces. But here, even Sanoko's shoelaces snapped. It seems the death god has indeed arrived, and his scythe has severed a bond that's lasted over a decade, Ren mused quietly to himself. He couldn't help but chuckle. The serialization of Detective Conan seemed to have dragged on longer than even Naruto and Bleach. With over 1,000 episodes and still no end in sight, the Scythe of Fate had certainly delayed the story long enough. Shaking his head, Ren stopped paying attention to the two heroines and shifted his focus to the protagonist. Having been recording earlier, Ren already knew where Shinichi was heading. But there was no need to rush. He intended to take his time, ensuring he didn't cross paths with the two model employees of the black organization. Slowing his pace, Ren eventually arrived at the remote location where the trade had occurred. Finding a bench along the roadside, he sat down leisurely, waiting for the next act to unfold. Not long after, a middle-aged, overweight man emerged from an alley in a hurry. He was panting heavily, and despite it being nighttime, he wore a pair of sunglasses. The sight made Ren raise an eyebrow in admiration. "You're still wearing sunglasses at night? Can you even see where you're going?" he muttered, shaking his head. After a moment, Ren continued to wait patiently. The transaction inside was likely complete, but he wasn't in a hurry to get involved. 10 minutes later, Ren stood up and entered the dark alley opposite the bench. He moved quietly, his footsteps barely making a sound. Turning a corner, he found only one figure lying on the ground, a high school boy. The boy's head seemed to have been struck, with traces of red blood matting his hair. No one else was in sight. "Ah! Ah!" The boy whimpered weakly as Ren approached, his voice barely audible. Ren's eyes lit up. The famous scene was about to begin. Standing silently, he started recording. The high school student, writhing helplessly on the ground, clawed at the grass with trembling hands as if trying to alleviate the pain. His body began to shrink. Slowly but surely, the high schooler's frame diminished, his limbs growing shorter, and even his clothes becoming comically oversized. When the transformation stopped, the boy was no longer a teenager but a child of 7 or 8. "From today on, Kudo Shinichi no longer exists," Ren murmured. "Only Edagawa Konan remains." A smirk tugged at his lips. "Pray, Shinichi. Pray that Ran doesn't have a diary of her own, or everything about you will be exposed." Satisfied with the recording, Ren turned and left. He had no intention of staying longer than necessary. Having worked all day, Ren needed to rest. Tomorrow was Sunday, a perfect day to relax and check the reward he'd receive for today's diary entry. As for Shinichi, now lying unconscious on the ground. Well, he's still breathing, isn't he? It's just a head injury. Nothing too serious, Ren muttered to himself, dismissing the matter entirely. There was no point in getting further involved. The less he meddled, the fewer unnecessary complications he'd face. After Ren's departure, 2 groups of people arrived at the alley. The first group frowned at the sight of the child lying on the ground. After a moment of hesitation, they pulled out cameras and snapped a few photos before leaving. The second group was similarly puzzled but didn't focus on the child. They took a few photos and quickly departed. Meanwhile, Nagi and Kaguya received the photos from their respective bodyguards. "A child?" Nagi frowned as she examined the images. "That man went into the alley, and now there's a kid lying there? The murder at the amusement park happened on the roller coaster, didn't it? So why is there a child in the alley?" Izumi chimed in, her tone cautious. "Nagi, we should consider the safety of the child." Maria, standing nearby, reassured her. "Don't worry, Miss Izumi. The bodyguards have already notified the police after taking the photos. The child will be fine." "That's a relief," Izumi said, exhaling softly. Maria scrutinized the photos more closely and immediately noticed something strange. Why are the child's clothes so oversized? Nagi and Izumi both turned their attention back to the images. "You're right. These clothes aren't suitable for a child at all," Nagi remarked. The child appeared to be 7 or 8 years old, yet the clothing was clearly meant for an adult. "What do you think, Izumi?" Nagi asked. "Well, Nagi, perhaps we should wait for that gentleman to update the diary," Izumi suggested. "That makes sense," Nagi agreed. Since he went to the alley, he must have known something would happen there. If he left without taking action, it's likely he knew the child was safe. The situation was undeniably strange. A child wearing adult clothes in such a context was highly suspicious. But without further clues, it was impossible to deduce what had happened. Waiting for the diary update seemed like the best course of action. As Nagi made her decision, Maria offered a practical suggestion. "Nagi, Miss Izumi, since we're waiting for the diary update, why don't we head home?" "Good idea," Nagi replied. The day had been eventful, but after noon, Nagi felt restless being out in public. Having recently obtained the vision, she wanted to experiment more with her newfound powers. However, the crowded amusement park wasn't an ideal place to test them. Now that they were heading home, she could finally unleash her powers freely, at least in front of Maria and Izumi. Meanwhile, Kaguya silently examined the photos sent by her bodyguards. "Hi Asaka, did any Shinomiya family bodyguards accompany us on this operation?" "No," Hayasaka replied with a shake of her head. "Since I thought this entire operation was irrational, I used bodyguards from the Hayasaka family instead. I didn't want the Shinomiya family to catch wind of it. Are they trustworthy? They're loyal. I selected them personally from my mother's recommendations." "Well done." Hayasaka's caution reassured Kaguya. There's no need for us to stay at this amusement park any longer. As for the identity of the child in the alley, I trust the diary will provide answers soon enough. Understood. I'll also make sure our people remain silent about this operation, Hayasaka assured her. Good. Chapter 12, Source Castle. After the two groups of people left Tropical Land, the child lying unconscious in the alley was discovered by the police. The boy's head injury and fever were apparent, and the officers quickly contacted the hospital. They carefully transported him, along with his oversized clothes, to receive medical attention. 30 minutes later, Ren arrived back at his home. The first thing he did was turn on the air conditioner. Despite the temperature not being particularly low, the house always seemed to have a chilling atmosphere. Thankfully, since water and electricity were free, there was no need to worry about utility costs. Next, he grabbed a fresh change of clothes and headed to the bathroom to wash off the day's sweat and fatigue. After a quick shower and change, Ren sat down in the living room, freshly cleaned and looking composed. He retrieved his diary and began to add to the day's entry. Diary entry, Shinichi Kuto, why did you have to provoke those killers? Well, now your fate is sealed. You were knocked out with a baseball bat and forced to drink a drug developed by the organization. If you weren't the protagonist, you'd probably be dead in Tropical Land right now. For anyone curious, here's a video of Shinichi Kuto shrinking into a grade schooler. Enjoy it, but don't spread it around. Ren inserted the video of Shinichi's transformation into the diary. The scene was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. For those who might have been in that alley, don't worry. Shinichi Kuto, Beka City's walking death god, will ensure murders happen wherever he goes. He's the root cause of the city's frequent cases. He loves meddling in other people's business, basking in the spotlight, and solving cases. But in his obsession with mysteries, he often neglects the people around him. Shinichi isn't a bad person. He's just like any ordinary 17-year-old, reckless and impulsive. Unfortunately for him, his recklessness led him to smash headfirst into a steel plate, turning him into a child. Next stop, Titan Elementary School. For now, Titan High School will be safe. I can finally relax a little. By now, you've probably figured out who I am. While I personally find it frustrating, I had a feeling this diary exposure would work like this. My identity being exposed and the lottery mention must have made some of you consider capturing me, right? Well, you're not wrong to think that way. If I were in your position, I'd want to do the same. But I'd also stop to wonder, why did this fool expose himself? If you've been pondering that question and think you've guessed my motives, congratulations, you're wrong. I truly had no reason at all. Well, today's entry ends here. Sweet dreams to all. With the diary complete, Ren set his pen down and exhaled slowly. Now, it's time to verify my theory. Diary completed for day 2. You have earned 1 lottery spin. As expected, the large roulette wheel appeared before him. He reached out and lightly tapped the wheel, watching as it spun rapidly. When the wheel slowed and stopped, the pointer landed on a name. Lord of Mysteries, obtained. Sefirah Castle. Source Castle, yes. Seeing the word Sefirah Castle, Ren felt a wave of relief wash over him. My guess was correct. This diary operates on specific rules. The more people who read my diary, the greater my chances of drawing something extraordinary. Staring at the word Sefirah Castle, Ren was certain now that the wild card rate he had obtained the previous day wasn't a coincidence. It was a deliberate setup by fate. Wild card was perfectly compatible with the Lord of Mysteries' magical potion system. And now, with Sefirah Castle, the protagonist's ultimate cheat from Lord of Mysteries, in his possession, Ren knew his next steps were clear. His path of power had been decided, the sequence system from Lord of Mysteries. It was as if fate had laid everything out for him. If I think about it, this might align with Lord of Mysteries' philosophy. The influence I've created is simply fate's way of balancing the scales by gifting me power. Though the thought intrigued him, there was no need to dwell on it. What mattered now was how much of Sefirah Castle's power he could use. I remember something about needing a ceremony. Ren frowned. It had been over 16 years since he'd last read Lord of Mysteries, and the details were hazy. Suddenly, a sharp pain struck his head, and he instinctively closed his eyes. When he reopened them, he found himself in another world. The air was thick with mist, flowing like water. Everything around him was shrouded in hazy gray, as though he stood at the dawn of creation itself. Ren's heart raced as he surveyed the ethereal scene. He reached out with his hand, and the mist began to coalesce into solid forms. One by one, massive white stone pillars rose from the ground. The misty sky above shifted, revealing a star-filled cosmos. At the center of it all, a long table over 10 meters in length appeared, accompanied by exquisitely crafted chairs. Walking along the edge of the table, Ren trailed his fingers across its surface before taking the main seat. Crossing his hands to support his chin, he smirked. Am I the perfect ghost player now? He chuckled at his own joke, shaking off his brief lapse into Chunabiu antics. Let's see what this place can do. Sefirah Castle held power far beyond the sequences, and it could also grant access to individual sequence abilities. Ren recalled how Klein had once borrowed the power of the miracle invoker to resurrect himself. If Klein could do that with limited access to Sefirah Castle, what could Ren achieve now? Taking a deep breath, Ren focused his will. A small flame appeared in his palm, flickering steadily. It works. It really works. His excitement, however, was tempered by realism. This is only a temporary gift, though. The current power is equivalent to Sequence 7, Magician. It's short-term and borrowed. But I can feel Sefirah Castle establishing a deeper connection with me. As that connection strengthens, the power I can temporarily borrow will also grow. For now, though, Ren felt reassured. I finally have a power I can rely on. Chapter 13, Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Nagi, now back in her villa, read the latest diary entry. When she saw the video of a high school student shrinking into a child, a chill ran down her spine. Izumi, under normal circumstances, could a high school student turn into a child? Even evil spirits skilled at manipulation can't do such a thing easily. At most, they might drain a person's energy or render them unconscious, but shrinking someone's body is unheard of, Izumi replied seriously. Unless it's some sort of transformation spell. But that's an advanced technique, far beyond what ordinary evil spirits are capable of. Then, what about medicine? Could ordinary medicine do it? Izumi tilted her head in confusion at the sudden question. Nagi-chan, do you mean normal medicine? As in, not something supernatural? Yes. Could it be possible? Among the medicines I know, there are some extremely advanced compounds that might temporarily shrink a person's body. But such drugs are not commercially available. They're usually proprietary to certain families or organizations. Hearing this, Nagi sighed in disbelief. So it's an incredibly low probability event. A high school detective turned into an elementary school student by some experimental drug created by an underground organization? Even knowing the truth, it felt too absurd to accept. Maria, bring me the photo of the child that the bodyguards took earlier. And also, did they take a photo of Shinichi Kudo today? Maria nodded and quickly brought over the surveillance photos captured by the bodyguards. The photo of Shinichi had been taken during routine surveillance, and the photo of the child lying in the alley was also ready. Nagi took both photos and examined them closely. Her eyes widened in realization. It's him. That child is Shinichi Kudo. Her sudden declaration left Izumi and Maria stunned. But when they compared the two photos, the truth became clear. It's the clothes. Izumi exclaimed. Yes, Maria added, nodding. The clothes in both photos are identical. The child is wearing the exact same outfit as Shinichi. Nagi sighed, her tone filled with disbelief. So the story is that Shinichi Kudo saw something he shouldn't have, got hit on the head with a blunt object, and was forced to drink some experimental poison, which caused his body to shrink. That seems to be the case, Nagi confirmed. Ah. Maria let out a long sigh. A plot like this sounds like something out of a novel or a movie. I can't believe it's actually real. Nagi nodded but quickly reminded Maria of the diary's earlier claim. Maria, according to that man, we're characters in a story. And our story has somehow been integrated into reality. Maria's head throbbed at the reminder. The more I think about it, the stranger this world becomes. Seeing Maria's pained expression, Nagi couldn't help but chuckle lightly. Maria, when we first learned about the existence of evil spirits, our world was already weird. That's true. Maria sighed again, resigning herself to the increasingly bizarre nature of their reality. Are there any other updates in the diary? Izumi asked. Yes, Nagi replied. It's about why he exposed his name. This immediately caught both Maria and Izumi's interest. What did he say? He claimed there was no reason for it. He just did it on a whim. Maria and Izumi exchanged incredulous looks before speaking in unison. Impossible. At the same time, in the Shinomiya family villa, Hayasaka reacted the same way. Absolutely impossible. She exclaimed. A person doesn't act without a reason. He must have had some motive for exposing himself. I agree, Kaguya said, her expression thoughtful. At first, I thought he was fishing, baiting us to act. But now, it seems more like he was conducting a test. A test? Hayasaka asked, puzzled. Yes. Not a test for us, but a test of the diary itself, Kaguya explained. Hayasaka's eyes widened as realization dawned. The lottery? Exactly, Kaguya confirmed. She was almost certain that the man had exposed himself to test whether the diary's lottery was influenced by the content he wrote. Thinking about it, Kaguya couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. If he succeeded in his test, He must have obtained power equal to or even greater than mine. She sighed deeply. If I had acted against him yesterday, I might have succeeded. But her cautious nature, ingrained by her family's strict upbringing, had made her hesitate. Her suspicion and overthinking had caused her to miss out on what might have been her greatest opportunity. Miss Kaguya, I think it's better to avoid becoming too entangled with that man, Hayasaka advised. He's the diary's true owner. If the diary has any sort of protection mechanism for its host, trying to take advantage of him could backfire. Kaguya fell silent, contemplating Hayasaka's words. You're right, she admitted after a moment. Whether or not such a mechanism existed was something only the diary's owner would know. As a mere reader, Kaguya could only gain what the diary allowed her to. Trying to seize more might result in losing everything. This was a lesson she had learned well from her family's teachings. But, Kaguya murmured, her eyes gleaming with determination. At least this diary gives me the chance to gain more power. Turning to Hayasaka, she issued a command. Hayasaka, practice with me tomorrow. Understood, Hayasaka replied, bowing slightly. Chapter 14. Waking up early in the morning is not pleasant. The morning air was as fresh as ever, but for Ren, waking up today was far from pleasant. As he opened his eyes, he was greeted by the sight of the 3 former owners of his home, their souls lingering in the room. I didn't expect there were actually 3 lingering spirits in this house, Ren muttered to himself, feeling a headache brewing. He had known this house had a dark past, with murders taking place before he moved in, but seeing the evidence firsthand was unsettling. Looks like my habit of staggering activity times wasn't just paranoia. It actually saved me. For the past year, he had carefully avoided staying active during certain hours, hoping to avoid any spiritual disturbances. But was that habit really effective? He wondered. In truth, Ren wasn't sure if his schedule was the reason he had avoided trouble so far. If anything, it might have been sheer dumb luck or the protection of his diary. Either way, it's clear I've been living on borrowed time, he thought, sitting up in bed and observing the spirits more closely. The air around him began to swirl with mist, a manifestation of his connection to Sefirah Castle. Swish. The mist coalesced into 3 tendrils, resembling the tentacles of an octopus, and quickly ensnared the ferocious-looking spirits. The spirits snarled and clawed at him, their distorted faces a grotesque reminder of their tragic ends. Classic movie evil ghosts, Amamiya Ren commented dryly, unimpressed by their antics. He snapped his fingers casually. Snap. The 3 spirits, once menacing and filled with malice, dissolved into glowing remnants, mere lumps of energy. Staring at the remnants, an idea sparked in Ren's mind. Can I turn these remnants into something useful? Perhaps an artifact? As if responding to his thoughts, the mist tentacles moved on their own, pulling the remnants together and condensing them into a solid form. Before him floated an object surrounded by a faint white glow. Did I just think it and make it happen? Ren wondered aloud, reaching out to grab the object. As the glow faded, the object revealed itself to be a simple bracelet made of wooden beads. One bead bore the character for I. Without hesitation, he slipped the bracelet onto his left wrist. Holding the bracelet with his right hand, Ren felt a sharp twinge in his forehead. The bead with the I character began to glow, and an ethereal, misty eye materialized in the air before him. The eye floated around the room, observing everything before passing through the walls and venturing outside. However, it soon reached its limit and stopped moving. 20 meters, Ren noted. That's the range. As the strain in his forehead grew, he willed the eye to return. It dissolved into mist and reformed as part of the bracelet. Well, it's not bad for now, he said, examining the bracelet. The artifact wasn't particularly powerful, but it was functional. It was clear that Sefirah Castle had imbued the remnants with some of its power, creating a temporary tool for his use. To test its other capabilities, Ren pressed his hand against the wall. The misty eye character sank into the surface, leaving a faint mark. Concentrating, he found that he could see the room from the perspective of the embedded eye. This is just like placing wards in a game, Ren remarked, chuckling to himself. The bracelet allowed him to place up to 3 eyes simultaneously, which made sense given it was made from 3 spirits. If these eyes can function over long distances, this thing might be more useful than I thought, he mused. Satisfied with his experiments, Ren stretched and got out of bed. Today's a day off, so I can relax a bit, he thought. Still, he wanted to test the maximum range of the eyes and see if they could function without needing to be retrieved. As he prepared to leave, his thoughts turned to the people who might have read his diary. Those people shouldn't come looking for me today, he guessed. They've probably just obtained their powers and will need time to adjust and train. A smirk crossed his face. I wonder if any of them will try to contact me directly. With that, he began his day. Meanwhile, in another city, the Sanzan Inn mansion was unusually lively. Nagi, normally grumpy in the morning, was up early and full of energy. "All right. Time to get up," she declared, throwing off her blanket. It was a rare sight. The girl who usually stayed in bed until noon was now standing bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Maria, who had shared the bed with her, was still fast asleep. "Maria, wake up," Nagi said, shaking her maid. Maria groaned groggily, her eyes half-lidded as she struggled to process the situation. When she finally opened her eyes, she was greeted by the sight of Nagi, who was practically glowing with excitement. "This must be a dream," Maria mumbled, closing her eyes again. She flopped back onto the bed, pulling the blanket over her head. Nagi waking up early. "That's impossible. I must still be dreaming." Hearing this, Nagi's face flushed red with embarrassment. She gritted her teeth and leaned closer to Maria. "Wake up already," she shouted, her voice loud enough to rattle the windows. "Pa." Maria shot up in bed, startled awake by the sudden outburst. "Nagi? What's gotten into you?" Maria exclaimed, staring at the unusually energetic girl in disbelief. "I have things to do," Nagi declared, her tone filled with determination. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of purpose. The power of the vision was still fresh and exhilarating, and she couldn't wait to explore its potential. Maria sighed, rubbing her temples. "I should have known." "You're just excited about your new toy," she muttered. Chapter 15, Kaguya locked in hot 8 o'clock in the morning. Izumi finally woke up, yawning softly. The events of the previous day had taken a toll on her. Though she was an exorcist, at the end of the day, she was still a 13-year-old girl. Apart from her spiritual abilities, her stamina was no different from any ordinary teenager. As she made her way to the hall, she was greeted by an unusual sight, Nagi sitting there with a red slap mark on her cheek. Nagi's eyes were slightly puffy, as though she had been crying. This unexpected scene left Sage Anemiya Izumi utterly baffled. She couldn't help but ask with concern, "Nagi, what happened to you?" "And nothing, hiss." "It's nothing," Nagi stammered, waving her hand dismissively. "I was just too excited when I woke up and accidentally bumped into something." But even as she spoke, she winced in pain, her sharp intake of breath betraying her discomfort. "It doesn't look like nothing. Honestly, it looks more like you got slapped," Izumi remarked, narrowing her eyes. The idea that someone had slapped Nagi seemed absurd. It couldn't have been Maria, could it? No, that was impossible. Izumi ultimately decided to take Nagi at her word. "All right, Nagi, but you should really be more careful. Even if you're excited about your new powers, you shouldn't be so reckless when you wake up." I know. It was just a one-time thing," Nagi replied, clearly embarrassed. As she tried to brush the topic aside, Maria entered the room, pushing a cart laden with breakfast items. "Good morning, Miss Izumi," Maria greeted warmly. "I made milk tea this morning. Would you like a cup?" "Thank you, Ms. Maria," Izumi replied, gratefully accepting the offered tea. The rich, creamy taste of the milk tea paired perfectly with the subtle bitterness of the black tea, helping Izumi shake off the lingering grogginess of sleep. After a few sips, Izumi turned back to Nagi, her expression serious. "Nagi, didn't you have the bodyguards look into who else might have had a strong reaction yesterday?" "Of course." Nagi's mood shifted instantly. Her usual excitement returned, though she still winced occasionally from the pain on her cheek. The bodyguards reported that only 2 families entered the amusement park yesterday, the Suzuki family and the Shinomiya family. "The Suzuki and Shinomiya families?" Izumi echoed. "But the Suzuki family can be ruled out," Nagi added confidently. "Why is that?" "The second daughter of the Suzuki family went to the amusement park to accompany a friend. She was worried about her friend's date with Kudo Shinichi." "Ah, I see," Izumi said, nodding in understanding. Yesterday, she had seen a photo of Shinichi, though, at the time, he had already been transformed into a child. Now, she had only one question. How did someone on a date end up getting beaten up by members of some shady organization and drugged? It was a profound mystery, to say the least. If he was on a date, shouldn't his focus have been on the girl? Izumi asked, genuinely perplexed. "Exactly," Nagi agreed. "It's no wonder Miss Suzuki was worried. Shinichi is the type to attract trouble." Nagi flipped through the report. According to the bodyguards, the Suzuki family's car even sent her friend home after the incident. He left his date behind to chase after danger. Izumi sighed. He's not a bad person, but he clearly lacks consideration for those around him. Shinichi's actions were brave, perhaps even admirable, but they came at the cost of neglecting the people closest to him. If he knew it was dangerous, he should have called the police instead of charging in by himself, Izumi said with a frown. The police were already on the scene because of the roller coaster murder case. Why didn't he think to involve them? After venting her frustration, Izumi returned to the matter at hand. "So, if it's not the Suzuki family, It must be the Shinomiya family? Exactly, Nagi confirmed. At this point, Maria produced a series of photographs. The images showed a motorhome with a frozen exterior. Izumi studied the photos carefully. The photos were taken afternoon, around the same time as Nagi's lottery, Maria explained. It seems Miss Shinomiya obtained special powers as well, Izumi concluded. But unlike Nagi, her powers are even more uncontrollable. She froze the entire car. The timestamp on the photos provided undeniable proof. It was almost certain that Shinomiya Kaguya, the daughter of the Shinomiya family, had gained extraordinary abilities. So, what are you planning to do, Nagi? Izumi asked cautiously. Of course, I'm going to talk to her, Nagi replied with a mischievous grin. You're going to reveal your hand? Izumi tilted her head in confusion. Is that really a good idea? It's fine, Nagi said confidently, puffing out her chest. We're not the right people to gather intelligence ourselves, but there's no harm in getting someone else to do it. Izumi frowned. Miss Shinomiya attends such an academy. Even if you speak to her, it's unlikely she'll transfer schools. And even if she agrees, the Shinomiya family won't. I know that, of course, Nagi replied, unfazed. She had already asked Maria to investigate the internal dynamics of the Shinomiya family. Armed with this knowledge, she was confident in her approach. That's why I need to meet Miss Shinomiya face to face. Chapter 16, Shinomiya starts to get nervous after leaving home. Ren wandered through the city, testing the abilities of the bracelet by planting eyes at various locations. Just as I thought, the planted eyes have no distance limit. He had taken a bus from one end of the city to the other and walked through numerous streets, a straight line distance of dozens of kilometers. Yet, the planted eyes remained active and fully functional. Unlike the movable eyes, which could roam freely but were tethered to him, the planted eyes functioned as static coordinates. As long as they weren't recalled, they could continuously monitor the area. Furthermore, recalling them was effortless and could be done remotely, no matter how far away they were. When recalled, the planted eye would return to the bracelet instantly, as though traveling through space. As expected of the power of Sefirah Castle, Ren muttered to himself, marveling at the spatial manipulation capabilities reminiscent of the door pathway. From this, it was clear that even though the bracelet was a small prop, it possessed certain extraordinary characteristics. However, its true potential could only be unlocked by someone capable of wielding such power. While testing the bracelet, Ren stopped at a family restaurant for lunch, taking a moment to think about his diary entry for the day. What should I write today? The content of the diary remained crucial. Every entry tied directly to the lottery, and he wanted to experiment with a mundane diary to see how it would affect the outcome. Suddenly, one of the eyes he had planted vibrated, signaling an event. Ren shifted his attention to the location the eye was monitoring. Through the eye, he saw a man in a baseball cap gripping a little girl by the neck and dragging her into an elementary school. The schoolyard was empty, it was the weekend, and there wasn't even a guard on duty. A kidnapping? The situation was obvious. Without hesitation, Ren put down his chopsticks and walked to a nearby public telephone booth to call the police. Using his personal phone would leave a trace, and that was a complication he preferred to avoid. 110 Emergency Services. How can I assist you? I just saw a man wearing a baseball cap dragging a little girl into Fudabashi Elementary School. It's the weekend, so there's no one there. I suspect it's a kidnapping. Are you certain? The location is Fudabashi Elementary School. Given the circumstances, I don't see any other explanation. Understood. Thank you for the report. We'll dispatch officers immediately. Be careful, he might be armed with a knife. Noted. Thank you for the warning. After hanging up, Ren returned to the restaurant, sat back at his table, and resumed eating his lunch as though nothing had happened. The Metropolitan Police Department immediately relayed the information to Inspector Juzo Magure, who was patrolling nearby. A kidnapping at Fudabashi Elementary School? Magure frowned, glancing out the car window. The school wasn't far from their location. Sato, turn off the siren and head to Fudabashi Elementary School. Notify nearby patrol units to assist. Understood, replied Sato Mueko, the female officer driving the car. She turned off the siren and used the radio to alert other officers in the area. Meanwhile, Ren continued eating, keeping an eye on the situation through the planted eye. The police are quite efficient when they're in the right mood, he mused, watching as 7 or 8 officers began sweeping the school grounds. The elementary school wasn't large, and there were only a few places where someone could hide. It didn't take long for the officers to locate the suspect in the school's storage room. 5 officers moved quietly, their guns drawn. Within moments, they kicked the door open and stormed in. 3 minutes later, 2 officers emerged, escorting the handcuffed man. A female officer followed, gently comforting the crying little girl. Not bad, Ren muttered to himself, nodding in approval. When they're not acting as background characters in a mystery drama, the police can be quite capable. With the situation resolved, he recalled the eye planted at the school. He had already decided on the theme for today's diary entry. I'll write about how I helped the police catch a kidnapper, he thought. It's a mundane event, but it'll serve as a good test for the lottery. With that decided, Ren finished his lunch and prepared to head home, concluding his day's experiment with the bracelet. Elsewhere, the Shinomiya household was in a state of quiet tension. Today, 2 unexpected visitors had arrived, Sanzan Nagi and Sagenomiya Izumi. Their arrival immediately drew the attention of the entire household. Even Shinomiya Oko, the eldest brother and presumed heir of the Shinomiya family, couldn't ignore the implications. Kaguya's sudden connection to these 2 prominent young ladies could shift the family dynamics entirely. Oko's gaze darkened as he pondered the situation. How did Kaguya manage to establish ties with the Sanzan family? He muttered to himself. No one had an answer. In a private room of the Shinomiya mansion, Kaguya sat across from Nagi and Izumi. On the table between them was a photo that left Kaguya with no room for denial. The atmosphere was tense. Only 2 maids stood nearby, silently observing. Kaguya's expression was calm, but her mind was racing. So, Ms. Sanzan and Ms. Sagenomiya, your experiences are the same as mine? No, Nagi replied with a sly smile. Only you and I share the same experience. Izumi is just here to accompany me. Friends, then? Kaguya asked, her tone neutral. It was no secret that Nagi and Izumi had a close relationship, but Kaguya hadn't expected them to share such personal secrets. So, Ms. Sanzan, is this a confrontation? Kaguya asked, her sharp eyes locking onto Nagi's. Chapter 17, the 2 young ladies join forces. It's more of mutual cooperation than a confrontation. Although we are different individuals, we share the same fate. Kaguya did not object to this. Indeed, they did share the same fate. Since Nagi had the diary as well, Kaguya was certain that she too had received the power granted by it. Nagi propped her chin up with both hands and said, your status within the Shinomiya family doesn't seem very good, does it? What exactly does Miss Sanzan mean by that? Do you want to control the Shinomiya family? As soon as these words left Nagi's mouth, Kaguya's hesitation from the day before vanished completely. I can control the Shinomiya family myself. As long as I master this power, I can use force to rule the entire Shinomiya family and bring it under my control. Oh, so you've already thought about it? Of course I have. Because of my background, I've never been accepted by the Shinomiya family. I was merely a princess waiting to be married off. If I can escape that fate, naturally, I would think about how to take control. But force alone isn't enough. If you use sheer force, most members of your family will only view you as a special individual, rather than as someone who deserves to rule. They'll interfere with your life more than ever. Kaguya fell silent. Indeed, even with overwhelming power, unless she could fully control the Shinomiya family's assets and structure, interference in her life would remain inevitable. She could resolve this by ruthlessly eliminating anyone who disrespected her, but could she really do such a thing? The answer was obvious, it was unlikely. She had to admit that seizing the position of heir to the Shinomiya family would be nearly impossible on her own. So, is Miss Sanzan offering this condition to me? Yes. If you're willing, I can help you fully control the Shinomiya family and claim the position of heir. This was no small statement. If anyone else had said this, Kaguya would never have believed it. But coming from Sanzan Nagi, with the Sanzan family's vast influence in both politics and business, such a claim carried real weight. If Nagi wanted to, she could use the Sanzan family's name to pressure the Shinomiya family, forcing them into submission. Kaguya was certain that the Shinomiya family's empire, no matter how vast, would collapse instantly if Sanzan turned against them. To avoid total destruction, the Shinomiya family would have no choice but to surrender and submit. After a moment of contemplation, Shinomiya Kaguya finally spoke. You're offering this because of the diary? Yes. You should know by now, wealth is useless compared to power. Nagi's blunt statement resonated deeply with Kaguya. In the past, she might have misunderstood the meaning of those words. But now that she had tasted real power, she understood them completely. Wealth and influence were fleeting. True power was the only thing that mattered. He revealed his name to test the diary's rules, Nagi continued. But since he's exposed both his name and the city he lives in, it would be inappropriate for us not to take the initiative to contact him. For him, us reaching out and giving him material for the diary is mutually beneficial. Nagi's intentions were now crystal clear, and Kaguya understood them perfectly. So, I'll also be part of this test. Exactly. He doesn't know who has access to the diary yet, so we need you to confirm whether our theories are correct. The position of heir to the Shinomiya family feels cheap in comparison. On the contrary, it's incredibly valuable. It's a test for the diary's host. Nagi's light-hearted retort momentarily broke Kaguya's icy demeanor, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. Indeed. Comparing the heir to the Shinomiya family with that person is like comparing night and day. Although that person's identity seemed ordinary, his hidden depth was unparalleled. By the way, Shinomiya, have you drawn your lottery reward for today? Not yet. Why don't we try it now? My guess is, we'll get nothing good today. I have the same feeling. The two of them exchanged a glance before taking out their diaries. They spun the large roulette wheel, and soon the results appeared. Thank you for participating. Yes, the results were exactly as they had expected. Not only did they fail to obtain anything good, they didn't receive anything at all. The sight of those 4 words made both of their faces twitch involuntarily. They looked at each other and saw the shared helplessness in their eyes. Nagi let out a long sigh. It seems the diary's rules for us are different from its rules for him. Yes. His rules are those of the host, the diary's owner, while ours are merely those of readers. Kaguya had reached the same conclusion. We observed him yesterday, and he reminded us about the lottery, which is why we received good rewards. As the diary's owner, his connection to us or the increase in the number of people reading his diary, directly benefits him. As for us, we probably need to interact with him directly to improve our chances in the lottery. The key lies with him. A large portion of their assumptions had been confirmed, but some aspects still needed further testing. The thought of actively approaching such a special individual gave Kaguya a headache. She was not someone who enjoyed initiating contact with strangers. However, that wasn't the most pressing issue right now. What truly mattered was her position as heir to the Shinomiya family. So, Ms. Sanzanin, will you transfer schools to meet him? Nagi looked conflicted for a moment. If it's necessary, then yes. We'll make contact with him directly. Understood. Kaguya nodded slightly. So, when does Miss Sanzanin plan to act? Right now, of course. With a sly grin, Nagi pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Old geezer, I need you to do me a favor. Chapter 18, 3 days, change of era favor? In a private villa on a remote island, Makoto Sanzanin was genuinely surprised. His granddaughter, Nagi, who rarely sought assistance, was now asking him for help. His surprise quickly gave way to a pleased smile. Go on, it's rare for you to need something from me today. Since it was unusual for his granddaughter to make a request, Makoto decided to take her seriously and not tease her with his usual jokes. It's like this, I want the Shinomiya family to change their heir. Huh? Did the Shinomiya family offend you? Not likely. Makoto didn't think the Shinomiya family had the courage to provoke the Sanzanin family. I met a friend today, and I want to help her. A friend? You mean the daughter of the Shinomiya family? Thinking of the Shinomiya family's daughter, he recalled her immediately, a child with a cold and aloof demeanor. But how did Nagi end up befriending someone like her? That's rare. I didn't think you'd interact with those types of children who are difficult to approach. Old man. Can you do it or not? Just call me Grandpa, and I'll do it. Grandpa. Hearing her soft and reluctant grandpa made Makoto pause for a moment, his heart skipping a beat. How many years had it been since he last heard her call him that? He couldn't even remember how long it had been. 3 days. In 3 days, the Shinomiya family will have a new heir. The weight of those words was terrifying. If spoken publicly, they would shake the business and political worlds. But coming from Makoto Sanzanin, it was a simple declaration of fact. He truly had the power to make it happen. Makoto didn't bother asking why his granddaughter wanted this done. If it was something Nagi desired, then the Shinomiya family would simply have to comply. Of course, Makoto wasn't a gentle or diplomatic man. He was infamous for his ruthlessness. He wouldn't negotiate with the Shinomiya family over the matter of succession. Instead, he'd break their limbs, and then step on their heads to say, Shinomiya, kneel down. Let's talk about your family's heir. After hearing his response, Nagi glanced at Kaguya, who had been listening silently nearby. Old man, don't die on me just yet, okay? I still have things I want to do. Don't worry, little Nagi. If nothing else, this old man has a long life ahead of him. Good. She chuckled and hung up the phone. Kaguya slowly regained her composure after hearing their conversation. This difference is overwhelming. Thinking about how she was constantly belittled and suppressed within the Shinomiya family, while Nagi was doted on by her own family. It was a stark and undeniable contrast. Taking a deep breath, Kaguya pushed down the sour emotions rising in her heart. 3 days. As expected of the Sanzanin family. She offered her praise without hesitation. Now, she fully understood the sheer power of the Sanzanin family. Kaguya had no doubts about Nagi's words. In fact, She had already started imagining what the Shinomiya family would endure over the next 3 days. But Nagi didn't seem the least bit proud. That's just the old man's power. He may do some ridiculous things, but his vision has always been spot on. This is more than just good vision. Kaguya didn't think such accomplishments could be explained away so simply. There were countless intelligent people in the world, but only one Makoto Sanzan-in had reached such heights. That level of influence couldn't be attributed to luck or foresight alone. But does this count as stepping on the Shinomiya family? Her emotions were conflicted. Yet, deep down, there was a faint and inexplicable sense of satisfaction. When the old man finishes his task and you officially become the heir to the Shinomiya family, it'll be time to act. This test is crucial. Understood. Kaguya agreed. The test involving that person and the rules of the diary was indeed critical for their future plans. Also, even after you become the heir, you shouldn't personally manage the Shinomiya family's business. Delegate the work to a few trustworthy people. You're not inheriting the Shinomiya family just to play their money-making games. Kaguya nodded. The profitability of the family business was no longer her concern. Her focus should be on strengthening herself. If she became strong enough, wealth would naturally follow. Hayasaka. If you're planning to use your maid's connections, you'd better clarify some things with her first. The sudden warning caught Kaguya off guard, but she quickly understood. Hayasaka. Is it my eldest brother or my third brother? At this moment, Hayasaka lowered her head, her expression dark and troubled. She had known this day would come eventually, but she hadn't expected it to arrive so soon. It's Soko. Humphrey, of course it's my eldest brother. He always likes to target the people around me. Kaguya's face turned icy, her anger barely contained. It was an outright betrayal, orchestrated by her brother. She had always despised betrayal, and now the person she trusted most, Hayasaka, turned out to be a pawn placed by her brother. Her lips trembled slightly as she tried to suppress her emotions. If it had been anyone else, she would have immediately expelled them. But this was Hayasaka. They had grown up together, sharing secrets and trust. With red eyes, Kaguya looked at Hayasaka. Hayasaka. Do you have nothing to say to me? I'm sorry. Hayasaka's voice was filled with guilt and remorse. She knew that her actions amounted to betrayal. Kaguya clenched her fists, wanting to lash out, to scream. Was I'm sorry all Hayasaka could say? Couldn't she give her an explanation or an excuse? But no matter how furious she was, Kaguya forced herself to remain calm. She knew that this wasn't entirely Hayasaka's fault, it was her brother's doing. Her brother had likely chosen Hayasaka because of her family's status as vassals of the Shinomiya family, and because of Hayasaka's close relationship with her. Suppressing her emotions, Kaguya spoke in a measured tone. Hayasaka, we'll talk about this later. Chapter 19, Serialized Detective Stories. There's nothing special to do on the weekend, and I don't have work today, so I can stay home and watch videos online, but staying at home all day is boring, so I went out for a walk. I didn't expect to run into a kidnapper during a casual outing. Vega City is truly a magical place. It feels like you can encounter criminals no matter where you go. After living here for over 10 years, I should be used to it by now. It's rare to come across something like this, so I called the police right away. The police responded quite quickly. That's why I said, Shinichi, when you found those 2 guys from the organization, you should have gone to the police first. Maybe you wouldn't have been hit with a stick. Today's diary doesn't have any particularly explosive content. After all, not every day is full of excitement, but yesterday, I witnessed the famous scene of Shinichi turning into a child. I wonder what happened after that. Did he move straight into Ran Mori's house? Nagi, reading the diary, suddenly became interested. Maria, are the bodyguards keeping tabs on Kudo Shinichi? Kudo Shinichi? I'll check. Maria left to inquire and confirm that the bodyguards hadn't been monitoring Kudo Shinichi, even after he had turned into a child. She immediately ordered them to investigate his whereabouts. The response came quickly, along with a photo taken outside a hospital ward. Maria handed the photo to Nagi. Maria, who are these 2 people? In the photo, besides Shinichi, now a child, there was a man with a mustache and a young-looking woman. The man is Kuto Yusaku, a world-famous mystery novelist. The woman is Kuto Yukiko, a renowned actress who won numerous awards during her career. Hey, so his father's intelligence and his mother's love for acting were perfectly inherited. From Maria's explanation, Nagi understood that Kudo Shinichi was indeed a perfect successor. Dubbed the Holmes of the Heisei era, Shinichi's reputation came with its own set of problems. Such fame often attracted unnecessary trouble and made him a target. It seems, as the diary said, he's not a bad person, just a kid at the age where he's impulsive and overly enthusiastic about things he's interested in. But she also understood why he was called the Death God. This was someone who would rush headlong into cases he found intriguing, regardless of the consequences. As for whether Shinichi was the root cause of the crime rate in Becca City, she was almost certain he was. Still, she couldn't deny that calling him Death God might be a bit unfair. Maria, in detective stories, don't the protagonists always stumble upon strange cases? Of course. To keep the story moving, detective stories are built around bizarre cases. Detective stories rely on one case after another to sustain the plot. The suspense and twists in the story are what make them interesting. Nagi glanced at Maria with a hint of surprise. Maria, you seem to know a lot about this. Well, I've read some books when I had free time. You've accumulated a lot of materials for drawing manga in the library, and I've cleaned them up over the years. Sometimes I'd find a book or two to read. Maria's explanation was reasonable. As Nagi's maid, her duties were complex, including handling Nagi's sudden whims. Occasionally, she needed some form of relaxation, and reading interesting novels became her pastime. After explaining, Maria gave Nagi a subtle look. So, do you think Kudo Shinichi is the protagonist of a detective novel? No, I don't think it's a detective novel. Nagi denied it outright. Detective novels wouldn't earn a protagonist the title of Death God. How many people would have to die for that to happen? True. Maria agreed. If a detective novel had enough deaths to warrant such a title, it would be an absolute failure as a story. So, I think it's probably a manga or anime. Maria froze at this sudden claim. Detective manga or anime? Are you saying the deaths are serialized? Exactly. That's why he's called the Death God. Makes sense. Maria couldn't refute such logic. Considering Becca City's situation, I'm starting to understand why its crime rate is so high. Nagi was speechless but felt like she had stumbled upon the truth. It's like the crime rate of the entire country is concentrated here just to provide cases for the protagonist. The statement was absurd, yet it strangely felt accurate. The fact that Kudo Shinichi turned into a child doesn't seem like the end of his story, it feels more like the beginning. Right. The story begins with the famous detective Kudo Shinichi being struck on the head by members of a mysterious organization, forced to drink a strange drug, and turning into a child. Then, he adopts a new identity and begins tracking the organization and the drug, hoping to return to his original self. Maria's speculation was logical, and Nagi found it convincing. A high school detective being turned into a child by a mysterious organization was the perfect setup for a long-running game of cat and mouse. Well, no wonder he seemed so unimpressed with being a Titan high school student. Nagi nodded in understanding but then grew curious again. Maria, what kind of story do you think we're in? For us? I think it's a slice-of-life story centered around you, Nagi, something lighthearted and full of your unique charm. Maria's response felt fitting, given her understanding of Nagi. If you're that curious, you could just ask him directly when the time comes. Yeah. Nagi agreed. She already planned to do just that. After finishing the diary, it was time for the day's lottery. But with yesterday's results still fresh in her mind, she didn't have high expectations. Genshin Impact, obtained recipe, Mondstadt hash brown, a fried cake of mashed potatoes, capable of restoring vitality. A little bit of pinecone helps give it a nice crunch, and great with a bit of jam. Loved by people of all ages. Chapter 20, Crushing, One Piece, Ingredients obtained, seeking meat, the meat of massive creatures living in the ocean. Highly nutritious. Long-term consumption enhances physical fitness. Staring at the massive piece of meat that now cluttered her room, Kaguya was left speechless. Is this really from a large ocean creature? It doesn't seem like anything from Earth. From the start, she had assumed large meant the earthly definition, but the scale here was far beyond her expectations. Walking closer, she took a sniff. There was no trace of blood. Instead, the meat gave off a strange but pleasant aroma, almost as if the scent itself came from the meat's essence. No wonder it's said to enhance physical fitness after eating. Kaguya now fully understood that the things given by the diary were beyond the realm of normal comprehension. Hayasaka. Turning around, Kaguya's face immediately darkened with anger. You. Take care of this today. All of it, alone? Once you've handled this, I'll consider forgiving you. A way out was offered. Even though Kaguya was furious, she still left Hayasaka a path to redemption. But it wouldn't be easy. This massive piece of meat was a perfect punishment. She didn't hesitate to toss the responsibility at Hayasaka. Staring at the slab of meat, over 3 meters tall and 6 meters long, Hayasaka was momentarily stunned. However, what shocked her even more was Kaguya's attitude. She knew very well how much Kaguya hated betrayal. Normally, forgiveness wouldn't even be an option. Yet here was Kaguya, giving her a chance. This punishment, dealing with the absurdly large meat, was not harsh at all compared to what could have happened. Years of understanding Kaguya allowed Hayasaka to see this clearly. Kaguya was offering her a lifeline. Though overwhelmed by guilt, she immediately bowed. I understand, Ms. Kaguya. Humphrey. Good. Kaguya couldn't stand the pitiful look on Hayasaka's face any longer and left the room with a huff. Left alone with the massive slab of meat, Hayasaka took a deep breath. Forgiveness. Miss Kaguya actually chose to forgive me. Tears welled up in her eyes as emotions overwhelmed her. I thought she would hate me. I thought I'd be driven away. Her own betrayal disgusted her, yet even so, Kaguya had let her off. Perhaps. Kaguya felt the same pain she did. Wiping her tears, she looked up with renewed determination. Miss Kaguya, thank you for your forgiveness. This time, I have a choice. I won't make the same mistake again. Taking another deep breath, she turned her attention back to the colossal piece of meat. Well, let's get started. While Kaguya and Hayasaka were repairing their bond, the Shinomiya family as a whole was being crushed under unprecedented pressure. As the current acting head of the Shinomiya family, Shinomiya Oko was utterly bewildered. What's going on? Why are we suddenly receiving so many warnings from both the political and business worlds? One particular message left his scalp tingling. As a businessman, Shinomiya should focus solely on business and refrain from meddling in politics. The implications were chilling. In the world of politics, where power often exceeded the bounds of control, this was a severe warning. In business circles, things were no better. Allies who had previously worked harmoniously with the Shinomiya family now turned their backs, issuing veiled accusations of greed. Shinomiya always wants it all, both sides of the pie. The Shinomiya family's tradition of exploiting their allies had finally backfired. While their methods had been tolerated due to their immense power, today was different. Today, no one cared about being reasonable. Allies were now enemies, collectively pushing the Shinomiya family into a corner. Oko tried to leverage the leverage he had over these allies, but the responses were shocking. Shinomiya Oko, if you want to expose those secrets of mine, go ahead. Let's see who falls harder in the end. The defiance left him at a loss. Things quickly escalated. Official sanctions began rolling in. Hotels and shopping centers under the Shinomiya name were ordered to shut down for safety violations. Their prized real estate ventures faced government sanctions, shipbuilding contracts were abruptly terminated, and orders for railways, mining, and oil projects were suspended. Every industry the Shinomiya family touched was being crushed simultaneously. Even procurement channels were severed, with suppliers choosing to pay penalties rather than continue working with them. This was no longer just a financial issue, this was survival. For Oko, who had never faced such opposition in his 40 years of life, this was a nightmare. Who wants to destroy the Shinomiya family? His voice trembled with desperation. The full-scale boycott by both political and business circles was rapidly dismantling the Shinomiya family's empire. Forced to seek answers, Oko visited his father, Shinomiya Ganon, in the hospital. Father, who has the power to do this to us? Hearing his son's plea, Ganon immediately knew the answer. It's Makoto Sanzanin. Makoto Sanzanin? Oko's face paled instantly. Less than half a day ago, the eldest daughter of the Sanzanin family and the eldest daughter of the Sagenomiya family had met with Kaguya. Now, the Shinomiya family was being crushed. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots. Recalling Makoto Sanzanin's infamous ruthlessness, Ganon felt a chill down his spine. That old man. Don't be fooled by his gentle appearance now. In his youth, he was utterly merciless. Only Makoto Sanzanin has the power to destroy the Shinomiya family so thoroughly. Ganon looked at his son. Oko, what did you do to offend Makoto Sanzanin? Oko was speechless. What could he say? He didn't even dare think about offending the eldest daughter of the Sanzanin family, let alone Makoto Sanzanin. Chapter 21, Undercurrents Underwater. Father, is there no way to stop Makoto Sanzanin? That madman won't stop unless he gets what he wants. Right now, the Shinomiya family is nothing more than meat on the chopping block. Unless you kneel and beg Makoto Sanzanin for mercy, surrendering completely to his arrangements, the Shinomiya family will only face destruction. Ganon knew Makoto's character far too well. If someone dared to provoke him, there was only one path forward, complete submission. However, Oko couldn't accept it. Is there really no other way? If you've provoked that old man, no one can save you. Ganon sighed deeply. While he wanted to help his son, he had to admit the harsh truth. Makoto Sanzanin was simply too powerful, a height the Shinomiya family couldn't hope to reach. Normally families like the Shinomiya family were rarely touched by the government, so long as they didn't cause too much trouble. The collapse of a family could destabilize the nation's economy, and the Shinomiya family was no exception. The government didn't want to see them fall, as it would impact countless jobs. This allowed the Shinomiya family to act recklessly for years. But this situation was different. If Mikado Sanzan-in were to fully take over the Shinomiya family, the economic ripple effect would stabilize quickly. In fact, the nation's economy might even see a surge under Sanzan-in's leadership. In such a scenario, no one would care about the Shinomiya family's survival. Garin saw the unwillingness in his eldest son's expression and reminded him sternly. Oko, the Shinomiya family cannot fall. If we collapse, we'll all die. Every single one of us. You understand this, don't you? Oko naturally understood. The Shinomiya family had offended too many people and other families over the years. Now, with Makoto Sanzan-in's methods on full display, the entire island nation was watching, eager to see the Shinomiya family's downfall. If the Shinomiya family surrendered, they would become nothing more than a dog under the Sanzan-in family's leash. Perhaps no one would dare to directly attack the Shinomiya family, but they would lose everything, just like the countless families they had crushed in the past. And if the Shinomiya family chose to fight to the bitter end? Then the other families would simply stand by, watching as the Shinomiya family was torn apart piece by piece. The vultures wouldn't attack yet, because Makoto Sanzan-in would take the lion's share. In the first scenario, the Shinomiya family might still retain some semblance of their legacy. But in the latter scenario, there would be nothing left, not even the name of Shinomiya. Oko, who caused this? Was it Kaguya? Seeing his eldest son's reluctance to answer, Garin slowly pieced it together. The only person who could prompt Makoto Sanzan-in to act so decisively was his granddaughter, Nagi Sanzan-in. Considering Nagi's age, the only connection she could have within the Shinomiya family was Kaguya. The answer was clear. As for whether Oko had directly offended Nagi Sanzan-in, Garin sneered inwardly. He didn't even have the courage to challenge Makoto Sanzan-in's granddaughter, let alone his son. Oko, it seems you've lost to Kaguya. Oko lowered his head in defeat. He had always seen himself as the strongest contender for the Shinomiya family's succession. He could control any situation, even restricting Kaguya's freedom. But now, Kaguya had taught him a lesson. Once she stepped off the chessboard, there were bigger players waiting to crush him without hesitation. All his past tactics were rendered meaningless. While the Shinomiya family faced internal chaos, the Shijo family was equally unsettled. What's going on this time? No one in the Shijo family could pinpoint the cause of the Shinomiya family's sudden crisis. Even Oko's investigations had yielded no answers. Makoto Sanzan-in's name remained hidden in the shadows. To outsiders, it seemed as though the Shinomiya family had simply made a critical misstep, leading to their downfall. I don't know the exact details, but it's clear that external forces are coordinating with the political and business worlds to crush the Shinomiya family. And we still don't know who's behind it? Most of the Shijo family members had gathered to discuss whether they should seize the opportunity to strike. Father, should we take action as well? Shijo, the family's heir, had a sharp mind and a reputation for calculated decision-making. Now that he was gradually taking on more responsibilities within the family, he naturally wanted to capitalize on the Shinomiya family's misfortune. No. Shijo Makoto, the current head of the family, immediately rejected the idea. The Shinomiya family is being suppressed by the political and business worlds in a manner that is abrupt and unprecedented. There were no warning signs, and even the Shinomiya family appears to be caught off guard. But look around. Has anyone else made a move yet? Have the Hayasaka family acted? They have more reasons to attack Shinomiya than we do. It's not that no one wants to act, it's that no one dares to act. While the surface appeared calm, the waters beneath were already turbulent. The Shinomiya family's sudden downfall made it clear how powerful the unseen hand behind this was. Everyone understood that the Shinomiya family was in dire straits, but whether they were truly doomed depended entirely on the person pulling the strings. No one will act until the dust settles. Makoto's tone was firm as he advised his son. You're a smart man. Learn patience. Understood, father. Te reluctantly suppressed his ambitions. Meanwhile, the Suzuki family also held their own meeting. Husband, who do you think is behind this? There's only one possibility. Suzuki Shiro adjusted his glasses, his voice steady. Makoto Sanzan-in. Suzuki Tomoko was momentarily stunned. Makoto Sanzan-in. Didn't that old man retire from the spotlight? Retired? Makoto Sanzan-in may no longer appear on the front lines, but if he has a reason, he'll still act. A reason? Tomoko looked at her husband in confusion. Does Makoto Sanzan-in have a reason to attack the Shinomiya family? Would the Shinomiya family even dare to provoke him? That's not it. Shiro dismissed the notion outright. The Shinomiya family wouldn't dare provoke Makoto Sanzan-in. He then pulled out a photograph, showing a black car parked outside the Shinomiya estate. Tomoko, guess who was inside the car? Was it someone from the Sanzan-in family? Makoto Sanzan-in's granddaughter, Nagi Sanzan-in, and the eldest daughter of the Sagenomiya family, The Mysterious Shrine Maiden Izumi Seijinomiya. Chapter 22, Hidden Interests. I know about Makoto Sanzan-in's granddaughter, but this Seijinomiya. Is her family really that mysterious? Yes, very mysterious, Shiro replied firmly, backing his statement with evidence. Seijinomiya is a shrine maiden family. Historically, their main business revolved around shrine-related work, specifically, exorcisms. Shiro, are you sure you're thinking straight? I came to this conclusion after a lot of research. Don't make it sound like I'm some fool who blindly believes in supernatural nonsense. Tomoko's reaction was natural, but even Shiro had found himself doubting his deductions at first. However, the deeper he investigated, the more apparent the truth became. Based on what I've found, the self-defense forces often visit the Seijinomiya family for certain matters. The self-defense forces? Visiting the Seijinomiya family? Tomoko couldn't wrap her head around it. The Seijinomiya family she knew of was involved in industries like food, beverages, and tea production. None of those businesses seemed significant enough to warrant attention from the self-defense forces. Not just the self-defense forces, Shiro continued, but also high-ranking government officials, renowned priests, onmyoji, and even public security officers from the island nation. Politicians frequently visit the Seijinomiya family for assistance with certain problems. If their businesses aren't directly helping those groups, then it's clear there's something else, something hidden, that draws them in. This all sounds so strange. Tomoko found herself increasingly baffled by Shiro's explanation. The Seijinomiya family's business ventures were respectable, but nothing about them seemed capable of influencing the upper echelons of politics and public safety. Are you sure you're not being overly speculative? No, Shiro replied, shaking his head. This isn't speculation. There's substantial evidence supporting the notion that the Seijinomiya family is far from ordinary. Prominent figures from all walks of life respect them. Even well-known priests seem to defer to them. And according to my research, Seijinomiya controls 50% of certain industries in the country. What's more, no one competes with them for that share. It's as if it's been deliberately left for them. Tomoko's eyes widened. 50%? And no one competes? Yes. That portion of their industries remains untouched, as though it's an unspoken rule. It's enough to keep the Seijinomiya family consistently ranked among the top families in the nation. Even the Sanzan-in family could be shaken, but the Seijinomiya family remains immovable. It's like some kind of rule, Shiro added. The deeper he investigated, the more convinced he became that the Seijinomiya family's position was deliberately maintained. This really is bizarre. Hearing all of this, Tomoko couldn't help but feel uneasy. The privileges afforded to the Seijinomiya family seemed entirely out of the ordinary, and their relative anonymity among the general public only made them more enigmatic. A Sanzan-in and a mysterious Seijinomiya. Tomoko mused. Shiro, why do you think Makoto Sanzan-in made a move against the Shinomiya family? That I can't say for sure. Shiro wanted to give an answer, but even with all his deductions, the exact reasoning eluded him. Then why did you sound so confident earlier? I was only analyzing the surface-level situation. How am I supposed to know what agreements exist between two 13-year-old girls and a 16-year-old girl? But one thing is certain, there's an interest involved here. Makoto Sanzan-in wouldn't act without a reason. My guess is that there's some sort of deal between Nagi Sanzan-in and Kaguya Shinomiya. Do you think Makoto's granddaughter is helping Kaguya Shinomiya seize power? Well, it's possible. Tomoko's suggestion made Shiro pause, and he realized it wasn't far-fetched. But there was one glaring issue. Why, though? What would Nagi gain from helping Kaguya Shinomiya seize power? That child can already get whatever she wants. Why would she go out of her way to meddle in the Shinomiya family's affairs? This question stumped them both. For someone like Nagi, who was born with everything, there seemed to be no reason for her to get involved in Kaguya's struggles. Instinctively, Shiro felt that the reason behind it was crucial, but with the limited information available, he couldn't reach a definitive conclusion. All we can do now is wait and observe. If Nagi is helping Kaguya seize power, then Kaguya will likely fulfill her part of the deal after gaining control. As he spoke, Shiro loosened the tie around his neck. We need to understand the true motive behind this. Is that really necessary? Yes, absolutely, Shiro said firmly. I have a feeling that whatever agreement they've made is extremely important. And understanding it could be vital for us. Years of experience in the business world had sharpened Shiro's instincts. He knew that the agreement between those girls wasn't trivial. It was significant enough for Nagi Sanzan-in to involve Makoto Sanzan-in and apply such overwhelming pressure on the Shinomiya family. For now, all he could do was suppress his impatience and continue investigating while waiting for more information. I'm home. The sound of their daughter's voice interrupted the couple's conversation. Dad, Mom, Why are you sitting in the living room looking so serious? Sanoko entered, curious about the heavy atmosphere. Is it about the business? Go away, stop jumping to conclusions the moment you walk in. Tomoko snapped, rolling her eyes at her daughter. You've been running around all weekend. Tell me, where exactly have you been? Despite giving their daughter plenty of freedom, Tomoko couldn't help but feel curious about Sanoko's whereabouts. Obviously, I've been with Ran, Sanoko replied. Yesterday, Ran went to Tropical Land with Kuto, so I went early to keep an eye on them. Turns out Tropical Land is more popular than I thought. Not just Ran, even that Ice Queen seems to like it. Ice Queen? Do you have a friend like that? Tomoko looked at Sanoko in surprise. Ah, I'm talking about Kaguya Shinomiya. Doesn't she always keep that cold, frozen expression? Just standing next to her makes me feel chilly, so I call her Ice Queen. Chapter 23, Why not persuade them to break up? Yesterday, Kaguya went to Tropical Land? This news left the Suzuki couple momentarily stunned. Yes, Sanoko confirmed. I was wondering why someone like her, a proper young lady who usually spends her weekends practicing etiquette and archery, would suddenly decide to go to an amusement park. She said it was to relax, but I think she was acting strange. Indeed, she's acting strange, Shiro agreed. Kaguya's trip to the amusement park, followed by Nagi-san's and In's visit to her home the next day, and then Mikado-san's and In's sudden move against the Shinomiya family, these events couldn't just be coincidences. There must be a connection. Maybe we can start by investigating Tropical Land, Shiro said, glancing at his wife. Tomoko immediately caught on. Sanoko, the Shinomiya family's way of raising their children is very strict. It's nothing like our family, Tomoko explained. Of course I know that, Sanoko replied with a sigh. But it seems like Kaguya's upbringing has made her emotionally stiff. She comes across as cold and overly rigid. It's honestly irritating to even look at her sometimes. Though she wouldn't admit it outright, Sanoko had noticed how strict and stifling Kaguya's life must be. Raised as the perfect princess, Kaguya was undoubtedly groomed to shoulder her family's responsibilities. It wasn't pity, but more a sense of frustration. Sanoko couldn't figure out how to approach someone like Kaguya, who was so closed off. She was like a frozen fortress, giving no one the chance to get close. The Suzuki couple exchanged glances, silently acknowledging their daughter's point. They decided to steer the conversation elsewhere. Sanoko, you said you accompanied Ran yesterday. Why did you go out again today? Because of those two. Sanoko exclaimed, her irritation immediately rising. After their so-called date at the amusement park, Kudo and Ran haven't spoken a word to each other. It's infuriating. Tomoko raised an eyebrow. Oh? What happened? Don't get me started. Sanoko fumed. Mom, do you know what that blockhead Kudo did? He agreed to go to the amusement park with Ran, but the moment a case popped up, he ran off to solve it. Ran was clearly shaken after what happened, but instead of taking care of her, he said, I have something urgent to do. You and Sanoko go home together. Can you believe it? Kudo's brain must be wired wrong. Shouldn't he have at least walked Ran home? How dense can someone be? The more Sanoko thought about it, the angrier she got. She still remembered how lifeless Ran had looked afterward. Tomoko didn't know how to respond. She hadn't expected the date to end so poorly. She felt a pang of pity for Ran. Kudo Shinichi might be brilliant, but his emotional intelligence was clearly lacking. If only he could apply even a fraction of his reasoning skills to relationships, I'm sure Ran would have confessed to him by now, Tomoko mused. But Kudo Shinichi was far from that kind of person. Sanoko, make sure to keep Ran company for the time being, Tomoko said gently. Anyone would feel down after something like that. Of course, Mom. That's what I plan to do, Sanoko replied. I just hope Kudo actually talks to Ran at school tomorrow. If he keeps acting like this, even Ran won't be able to take it forever. Did you try finding Kudo today? Shiro asked. He wasn't home, Sanoko grumbled. I went with Ran to look for him, but he wasn't there. He probably ran off somewhere to solve another case, completely forgetting about Ran. Tomoko sighed. That boy really is a handful. But she couldn't help feeling relieved. At least you don't have a crush on someone like Kudo, Sanoko. Otherwise, your father and I would be pulling our hair out. She had always taught Sanoko to be cautious when forming relationships, especially romantic ones. Dating was fine, but it had to remain simple. No living together, no rushing into decisions. After all, as the future heir to the Suzuki family, Sanoko's choice of partner would determine the future of their conglomerate. Fortunately, Tomoko knew her daughter well. While Sanoko was undeniably a face-con, she had a good head on her shoulders. Still, Tomoko felt the need to offer some advice. Sanoko, if things don't improve, maybe you should try persuading Ran to reconsider her feelings for Kuto. If she stays hung up on him, I don't think it'll end well. As an elder, Tomoko knew it wasn't her place to interfere directly. But as someone who cared for Ran, she couldn't bear to see the girl trapped in a one-sided relationship. I've already tried. Sanoko exclaimed. But no matter what I say, Ran always ends up thinking about Kuto again. I just wish a handsome guy would come along and sweep her off her feet. Then maybe she'd finally forget about that idiot Kuto. Sanoko's words were blunt, but she meant them sincerely. She truly wanted her best friend to find happiness. Meanwhile, the person they were talking about was sneezing uncontrollably in a hospital bed. Aku. 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 Shinichi sneezed 3 times in a row, his head spinning as he tried to recover. Let me be clear, he said, rubbing his nose and glaring at his parents. I'm not planning to run away with you. Yusaku and Yukiko exchanged troubled glances. Their son's stubbornness was as unyielding as ever. Shinichi, the situation you're in is incredibly dangerous, Yusaku said. The 2 men you saw are likely high-ranking members of a dangerous organization. They won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who gets in their way. I know, Shinichi replied, his hand instinctively touching the back of his head where he'd been struck. If the blow had been any harder, he might not have survived. But even so, he remained resolute. Dad, do you really think running away will make me safe? Chapter 24, Giving up everything to stay. Hey, given my current situation, Dad, do you really think running away would make me safe? Shinichi let out a bitter laugh. The poison is highly suspicious. How can a drug supposedly meant to kill someone shrink their body instead? I doubt it's even a poison in the traditional sense. I suspect its so-called poisonous effect is just an unintended side effect. And once the truth about this drug is exposed, and people find out that I'm a living specimen for it, my fate will be sealed. Shinichi wasn't a fool. He often got so absorbed in solving cases that he forgot about the people and circumstances around him, but his mind worked fast when it mattered. That organization has been gathering money for years, likely funding research for this drug. And with their behavior, I'm sure the world's intelligence agencies are already keeping an eye on them. If those agencies find out about me, I'll lose my freedom. Isn't that what you're trying to say, Dad? Yusaku stayed silent for a moment before nodding. That's exactly what I mean. That's what the witness protection program entails. As long as you enter the program, the FBI will erase all traces of your past identity. Honestly, it's the safest option for you right now. For an ordinary person, erasing their identity might take a lot of effort, but Shinichi's current circumstances made it easy to sever ties with his old life entirely. Like you said, Dad, if I join the program, I'll lose my freedom. And on top of that, my situation will be entirely under the FBI's control. So, I refuse. Shinichi's voice was resolute, with no trace of hesitation. If I join the program, sure, I might be safe, but everything else will head in the worst possible direction. Even if the organization is taken down someday, I doubt they'd use the antidote to restore me. I'd probably remain their living specimen indefinitely. He laughed at himself, the bitterness evident in his tone. Caught in this predicament, Shinichi had finally realized something important. A detective must first ensure their own safety before rushing into danger. His current situation was a result of his own curiosity and insatiable thirst for answers. Dad, I don't want to end up like that. Yusaku sighed heavily. How could he possibly want his son to face such a future? But his fatherly instincts conflicted with reality, leaving him stuck between 2 difficult choices. Shinichi, do you realize how irresponsible this decision is? If we leave you here, what can you even do? Entrust you to Dr. Agasa? Do you plan to drag him into this mess as well? Yusaku's tone turned cold, his voice sharp as he addressed his son. He had to make Shinichi face reality. You can't do anything on your own. And knowing your personality, the moment you come across a case, you'll rush in headfirst. Do you think you can handle that alone without involving anyone else? Yusaku's words hit their mark. Shinichi fell silent for a moment, his expression conflicted. I can't do it. Yusaku was right. He couldn't achieve his goals without relying on others. But that's why I need your help, Dad. His answer made Yusaku laugh bitterly. You know you can't avoid involving others, and yet you still ask for my help. Why? Because I don't want to give up my freedom or my future. I want to track down those people myself. So you're willing to stay here, even at the risk of implicating others? Yes. Yusaku felt an immense headache coming on. His son was not only stubborn but also incredibly difficult to persuade. Is this how you justify risking other people's lives for your own goals? No. Shinichi's eyes were steady, filled with determination. I won't let anyone else get involved because of me. I'll do everything I can to suppress my curiosity and avoid any suspicious behavior. At the same time, I'll protect anyone who ends up being dragged into this because of me. I won't let that organization harm my friends or family." The conviction in his voice was undeniable. Yusaku felt a mix of emotions, pride at his son's growth and frustration that it had to happen under such circumstances. A part of him wished Shinichi could simply leave this dangerous situation behind. But now, it seemed there was no turning back. "Yusaku." He turned to his wife, Yukiko, who had been tugging on his sleeve. "Is there really no way we can give Shinichi a chance to handle this himself?" Yukiko's tone was soft, hesitant, but her words reflected her growing agreement with their son. Yusaku sighed, thinking it over. He couldn't help but consider the possibility. After a long moment, he turned to Shinichi. "Fine, Shinichi. If you don't want to join the witness protection program, I'll respect your decision. But there's one condition: you must abandon your identity as Kudo Shinichi completely." Shinichi's eyes widened. "You can't use the name Kudo Shinichi until that organization is destroyed." This condition was no less than a death sentence for his identity. Even if he found the antidote, he wouldn't be able to reclaim his former life. It was a way to ensure his survival, but at the cost of erasing the person he used to be. "So you're asking me to kill off Kudo Shinichi's identity?" "That's right. It's the only way you can stay here without being targeted." Shinichi clenched his fists, understanding his father's reasoning. He knew the organization was no trivial threat. His father's condition wasn't just a punishment, it was a necessary precaution. "I agree. I'll let Kudo Shinichi die and live under a completely new identity." Yusaku sighed again, shaking his head slightly. He wasn't surprised by Shinichi's answer. "All right, I'll contact some friends in the public security department to make the necessary arrangements. And we'll create a new identity for you. But remember, Shinichi, you've made your choice. There's no turning back now." "I understand," Shinichi replied without hesitation. He didn't regret his decision. Chapter 25, officially embarking on the road to sequence. What a surprise. After completing today's diary entry, Ren drew his lottery reward. The content of today's diary wasn't particularly rich, nor did it have any significant impact on other diary holders, yet the reward still came through. Lord of Mysteries, obtained sequence 9, Seer Potion, a dark blue, slightly sticky liquid appeared in a test tube, about as thick as 2 finger joints. It seems as long as I carefully record my daily life, I'll continue to receive rewards. And the items I draw seem to not only align with the content of my diary but also with my current stage of progress. How considerate. He picked up the test tube, removed the cork, tilted his head back, and downed the potion in one gulp. The sticky texture wasn't particularly pleasant, it felt like swallowing a soft, green tongue. As for the taste, it resembled a strange mix of compound juices. In short, it could be summarized in 2 words: it's awful. Potions were unpleasant not only in taste and texture but also because of the inherent risks they carried. Drinking a potion involved assimilating the spiritual imprint contained within it, forcing a confrontation between one's self and the imprint. As one progressed further down the sequence, the accumulation of spiritual imprints would increase, heightening the risk of mental instability or even schizophrenia. But this feels refreshing. The spiritual imprint from the potion became evident, yet instead of resistance or conflict, Ren felt a pleasant sense of assimilation. Rather than inducing the usual symptoms of schizophrenia, the spiritual imprint seemed to merge harmoniously with his own consciousness. The imprint didn't resist or struggle but actively cooperated, willingly becoming part of him. It even aided him in absorbing the potion's power. So this is the effect of wild card. Ren couldn't help but grin. As he had anticipated, this characteristic was incredibly compatible with the potion system. The side effects of the potion system, such as mental instability and eventual out-of-control phenomena, were fundamentally negated by his unique trait. Normally, individuals walking the sequence path would either absorb or suppress the spiritual imprint from the potion, but the end result often led to mental fragmentation. However, Wildcard completely flipped the script. This trait embraced the spiritual imprint, allowing it to become a natural extension of his personality. Rather than the imprint assimilating him, it willingly recognized him as the dominant personality, submitting itself to him and choosing to merge. It was as though the imprints yearned to return to their source, with him as their natural destination. And I don't even need to act. I can continuously draw on the power of the spiritual imprints to strengthen myself. If I incorporate the acting method, perhaps I can speed up the absorption process even further. I'll have to experiment with that. The implications were clear. Wildcard wasn't just helpful, it was an unparalleled advantage. For anyone taking the sequence path, possessing such a characteristic would save them from countless risks and complications. Tomorrow, I'll buy a divination book to start supplementing my knowledge of the occult. But that was a matter for tomorrow. Yawning, Ren began to feel drowsy. He rubbed his eyes, headed to the bathroom for a refreshing shower, and climbed into bed, falling asleep with the satisfaction of having officially embarked on the sequence path. The night passed quickly, and before long, it was the next morning. Ren arrived at Titan High School in high spirits. The school atmosphere was the same as usual. Just like last year, he remained an insignificant presence. At school, he was an introvert among introverts. He avoided communication, refrained from socializing, and naturally had no so-called friends. This detachment made it easier for him to observe and determine who might have obtained the diary. He took his seat in the classroom and began listening carefully to his classmates' gossip. It seems that Kudo appeared on TV again. Yeah, I saw it. He solved a case while visiting tropical land. That guy might be arrogant, but his reasoning skills are undeniably impressive. The classroom buzzed with chatter about what had happened at tropical land the day before. Many expressed envy, marveling at Kudo's abilities. Indeed, Shinichi was someone others couldn't help but envy. He was handsome, intelligent, and came from a wealthy family. He lived in a villa with its own private courtyard, a lifestyle straight out of an anime protagonist's script. What made people even more envious was his childhood friend, Ran Mori. Ran was well known throughout the school, a beautiful girl with a good figure, a gentle personality, and an approachable demeanor. Her fiery side only emerged when dealing with Shinichi. Of course, everyone was aware this dynamic was part of the Kudo couple's daily interactions. Rumors about Shinichi and Ran being a couple had circulated in school for a long time. Neither had ever confirmed or denied the rumors, which only fueled the teasing. Many referred to them as the Kudo couple in jest. Ren adjusted his glasses, picked up his diary, and began writing. Diary entry: as soon as I arrived at school, I overheard my classmates talking about what happened at tropical land yesterday. Just like always, Shinichi's case-solving process and his remarks in front of the camera were reported on. Not surprising, however, starting today, Shinichi probably won't make any public appearances for a long time. I feel a little sorry for Ran Mori. As for Shinichi, I wonder if he'll follow the original story and move into Ran's house as a guest. He paused for a moment, resting his chin on his hand in thought. As long as nothing major happens, Shinichi's story will likely continue along its original trajectory. If not, it would mean Ran or Sanoko got the diary. But even if one of them has the diary, would they really resist Shinichi moving into the Mori household? It was difficult to predict. As for Shinichi and Ran's relationship, at most, Ran might hesitate a little before ultimately forcing Shinichi to move in. This will serve as a key indicator to determine if either Ran or Sanoko has the diary. If either of them held the diary, Shinichi likely wouldn't be able to move into the Mori household. That would serve as a crucial point of judgment. Chapter 26, Faking Death and Escape. At noon, some students brought their own lunch, while others headed to the student cafeteria. Ren was among those who went to the cafeteria. A simple meal with a few dishes was considered his lunch. Poor students couldn't afford extravagance. As soon as he sat down, he overheard a conversation from the next table. It seems that Kudo's parents came to school today. Yusaku Kudo and Yukiko Kudo? Why are they back? Ren was a bit surprised but continued to listen. Why did Kudo's parents come to school? Didn't he take a leave of absence today? What does Kudo's absence have to do with his parents coming? He's taken leave before, but his parents never came to school for that. Ren quietly absorbed the conversation, piecing together the situation. It seems Shinichi, who fainted in the alley on Saturday, must have been found by the police and taken to the hospital later. The hospital likely contacted his family through Shinichi's phone while he was unconscious, which explains why his parents returned. This is unexpected. The situation was beginning to shift in a different direction. The return of Shinichi's parents was bound to set off a chain reaction. If they knew what had happened to their son, they were likely making plans for his extended absence from school. Could the couple be planning to take Shinichi abroad? But even if they did, the outcome wouldn't necessarily be good for him. If Shinichi sought protection abroad, there would undoubtedly be a price to pay. Intelligence agencies like the FBI don't do anything without extracting their share of benefits. Once they realized Shinichi was a living specimen of the drug, his safety might be guaranteed, but his freedom would not. Well, I doubt Shinichi would choose something so extreme. He'd likely choose to stay. Whether Shinichi's decision is driven by realism or something else, though, is another matter. In the original story, Shinichi never seemed to think too practically. His decision to stay stemmed from his unwillingness to leave Ran. Ran, caught up in curiosity, found himself eating faster. After quickly finishing his meal and returning the plate, he made his way to the corridor outside the principal's office. He pressed his hands against the window, peering inside, and let the misty eye from his bracelet float into the room. Inside were three people, the principal and Kudo's parents. The bracelet's eye didn't have auditory functions, but that wasn't an issue. Ren pulled out his diary. The diary's recording function relied on what the eye observed, and it captured sound as well. Then he heard it. I extend my condolences for Shinichi's experience. The opening statement almost threw him off completely. Condolences? Why is the principal mourning? Did Shinichi get hit to death by that stick? That's ridiculous. This development was completely unexpected, and Ren rubbed his forehead, replaying the events from Saturday. He was certain Shinichi had been alive when he saw him in the alley. If the blow had been fatal, Shinichi's body wouldn't have shrunk. The stick had knocked him unconscious, but it definitely hadn't killed him. Without dwelling on the ongoing conversation inside, Ren pulled out a 500 yen coin and infused it with his spirituality. Kudo Shinichi is not dead. It was a simple two-choice divination, requiring only a straightforward method. The coin landed heads up, yes. To ensure accuracy, he repeated the divination 4 more times. Each time, the coin landed heads up. The answer was clear. Shinichi faked his death. So, he had his parents stage his death? Shinichi, you're truly ruthless. You've essentially killed off your own identity. You're planning to fight the organization to the bitter end, refusing to restore your identity as a high school detective until the organization is destroyed. Ren couldn't help but admire Shinichi's decisiveness. This wasn't a choice someone with half-hearted determination could make. We didn't expect something like this to happen to Shinichi. Yusaku's exhaustion was evident. Yukiko, her eyes red and swollen, sat silently beside him. The principal, sitting across from the couple, looked visibly uncomfortable. He had no idea how to comfort parents grieving their son. Words of solace seemed hollow and ineffective. Mr. Kuto. Don't worry, Principal, Yusaku said calmly. Yukiko and I will manage our emotions. But I hope the news of Shinichi's death doesn't spread within the school for now. Of course, the principal replied without hesitation. I promise no student will hear about Shinichi. Will the media outside catch wind of it? No. Yusaku shook his head, reassuring the principal. I've already discussed Shinichi's situation with the Metropolitan Police Department. For now, his death will remain a secret. I see. The principal nodded, visibly relieved. Since the police were already involved, the school could cooperate without worry. Thank you for your understanding, Yusaku said, standing up. Yukiko and I will take our leave now. There are still matters to attend to. The couple exchanged brief pleasantries with the principal before leaving the office. Once they got into their car, the weight of their emotions finally broke through. The school side is taken care of, Yusaku said, exhaling deeply. Yes. As long as there are traces left at the school, it should be fine, Yukiko replied softly. Yusaku nodded. The public security department has also handled everything. Shinichi's fingerprints, DNA, and even his school records have been completely transferred to his new identity. Every detail has been altered to ensure no one can trace him back. But by doing this, Yusaku trailed off. He sighed deeply. This is a decision without any chance of turning back. Once the identity of Kudo Shinichi was erased, there was no going back. This was precisely why Yusaku had wanted his son to leave the country. The organization could take years, or even decades to destroy. If this dragged on too long, the name Kudo Shinichi might be forgotten forever. Yukiko, sitting quietly, finally spoke. That child. He's just too stubborn. Chapter 27, The Young Master Who Came to the Door. Shinichi's situation is beyond my understanding. It seems that after I left, the people who went to tropical land because of me contacted the police in advance and sent the unconscious Shinichi to the hospital, perhaps because Shinichi was comatose. The hospital needed to find his family. So, they used the phone in Shinichi's clothes to contact his parents, even calling back Kuto Yusaku and Kuto Yukiko, who were abroad. This is truly a surprise, but what surprised me even more was Shinichi's choice. In order to stay, he decided to completely abandon his identity. Honestly, I admire Shinichi's decisiveness. Anyone who has seen Shinichi's condition would know that what he took wasn't poison but rather the intended effect of the drug. The organization really is remarkable. Having developed a drug with rejuvenating properties, the concept of longevity has always been the ultimate goal for people throughout history. Even with boundless wealth, it all eventually returns to the earth. Longevity is the aspiration of all those in power. This holds true for every era and every high-ranking individual. Putting down his pen, Ren pondered carefully. It made sense. In the end, no one could escape the desire for longevity. But does this mean the research and development ability of the organization is strong or weak? They were capable of developing a drug with rejuvenating effects, but after losing the Meno couple, they seem to have stagnated in terms of progress. Or perhaps the Meno couple's daughter is the only one capable of continuing their research. It's hard to say. The organization likely has numerous talented personnel. Particularly in research and development, they must have recruited scientists from all over the world. However, aside from the Meno couple and their daughter, it seemed the organization lacked other researchers capable of developing APTX 4869. Knowing that the Meno couple's daughter was a rare talent who could further the drug's development, they still allowed their top operative to toy with the Meno sisters. Clearly, by controlling Meno Akemi, they could have easily controlled Meno Shio. So why did the organization choose such extreme measures? Was it simply to highlight their strict internal rules? Regardless, Ren felt that the organization's actions were laughable. The development of the drug was clearly their priority, yet the organization's objectives seemed to have shifted to stirring up chaos everywhere. So, is this just a power grab by Rum to wrest control from Karasuma Renya? Ren had no intention of delving too deeply into these mysteries. He had watched Detective Conan before his reincarnation. 16 years had passed since then. Who could remember everything clearly? Besides, the number of episodes in Detective Conan was longer than his own lifespan. Who could watch all of them and remember every critical plot point? Right now, his interest lay in whether Kuto would live with the Mori family in the future. Shinichi must have some selfish motives for staying. On one hand, it's definitely for Ran. How could he give up so easily after harboring a crush for so many years? I'm sure he's worried. Worried that Ran might fall in love with someone else in his absence. But abandoning his past identity to stay behind is not a wise decision. By giving up his identity, he could stay close to Ran in the same country. However, being forced to watch from the sidelines without being able to intervene would be far crueler than remaining oblivious. In the original story, wasn't there a doctor who had deep feelings for Ran? In a special episode set 10 years later, wasn't it hinted that Ran even proposed to him? TSK, I wonder how things will play out this time. This content seemed worthy of being recorded in his diary. But Ren knew he had to wait and see how things unfolded with Ran. Amamiya Ren was curious, but he also understood that some things shouldn't be written about too extensively. Especially while he was searching for the other diary owners. By the way, are the owners of these diaries always this cautious? At that moment, the diary owners whom Ren was muttering about were silently reading the entries in their hands. Longevity. That is indeed what every person in power desires to pursue. Kaguya nodded in agreement with that part of the diary. Throughout history, countless individuals had sought immortality, yet without exception, they all failed. It's astonishing that an assassination organization would actually research such a drug and even achieve some results. Hayasaka, if you had the opportunity to obtain longevity, would you pursue it? Yes, Hayasaka replied honestly. But more than longevity, I would prefer immortality. As everyone knows, longevity and immortality are completely different concepts. Rather than simply living longer, as a girl, what Hayasaka valued more was maintaining her beauty. You're really greedy. Kaguya couldn't help but mock her, though she fully agreed with her sentiment. Compared to longevity, immortality was more aligned with a girl's desires. She glanced back at Hayasaka. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, the whites of her eyes were bloodshot, and her wrists were slightly red and swollen. You spent the whole day processing the meat? Yes. Have you reflected on your actions? Yes. Humphrey. Then I'll let your betrayal slide this time. The punishment had been dealt, and Kaguya chose not to pursue Hayasaka's betrayal any further. That said, Hayasaka hadn't acted on her own initiative. Otherwise, Kaguya wouldn't have let her off so easily. Contact Aunt Nao and ask her to come over tonight. Yes. The affairs of the Hayasaka family needed to be addressed. Kaguya was keeping track of time and monitoring the state of the Shinomiya family. Yesterday, Nagi had given her an answer. In 3 days, unless the family had changed, the Shinomiya family would be headed for ruin. Based on her understanding of her eldest brother, he would undoubtedly seek her out. As for how her eldest brother would know, Kaguya didn't think her brother was so incompetent that he wouldn't even recognize who was betraying him. Even if Nagi's behind-the-scenes actions were subtle, they still left clues. As long as her brother discovered that Sanzanin was involved, wouldn't the woman who had met with Sanzanin yesterday be the obvious answer? That evening, 2 cars pulled into Shinomiya Kaguya's mansion. One belonged to the main family, while the other was from the Hayasaka family. The people from both cars exited at the same time. Nao. Good evening, Master Oko. It seems my little sister is truly taking action now, even going so far as to summon you. Oko smiled, but in Hayasaka Nao's eyes, that smile was filled with desolation. Chapter 28, I don't like it. Hayasaka Nao knew well what was happening within the Shinomiya family. She had been pondering who the mastermind was, someone capable of rallying so many external forces to collectively resist the Shinomiya family. And the final answer turned out to be Ms. Kaguya. This was truly unexpected. Nao bowed slightly. Master Oko is joking. You know whether it's a joke or not. Shinomiya Oko sighed, a hint of dejection in his tone. My youngest sister, I've always treated her as nothing more than a tool. Who could have imagined that a mere tool would end up scheming and stepping on the Shinomiya family with one foot? It's not just my sister, your daughter is the same. The wedge I've always kept firmly in my hand has betrayed me in the end. Having hunted for half a lifetime, he was now pecked in the eye by the eagle he had raised. The irony was unbearable. Perhaps if he had been aware of certain things beforehand, he could have still retained control. Unfortunately, everything he had built up was now a complete joke. Well done. She didn't show it on her face, but in her heart, Nao couldn't help giving a thumbs up to her daughter and Ms. Kaguya. The person who had the deepest control over the entire Shinomiya family was undoubtedly Shinomiya Oko. This man was ruthless and would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. If such a person was forced into a corner, it could only mean he had been crushed in an overwhelming defeat. Nao hadn't investigated who was behind this push. The Hayasaka family wasn't in a position to openly betray their master right now. That's why she quietly enjoyed seeing the proud and arrogant young master of the Shinomiya family so utterly devastated. When she returned, she would definitely describe this situation in full to Masato. On the surface, Nao maintained her usual gentle expression, exuding respect in every gesture. Young Master Oko, maybe things aren't as you think. Oko suddenly remembered why he had chosen the Hayasaka family in the first place. Aside from the fact that they were easy to control, there was also this person, Hayasaka Nao. Her expression was so perfectly controlled that even he couldn't detect a single flaw. Like mother, like daughter. You're just like you were when you served Anio. You're more tactful than your daughter and better at maintaining a poker face. Thank you for the compliment, Master Oko. Even though she knew it was an insult, Nao remained unbothered. At this moment, any reaction from Oko was nothing more than the angry howling of a defeated dog. Young Master Oko, it's getting windy outside. Let's head in first. We wouldn't want to keep Miss Kaguya waiting.